to you to spend it wisely, and you showed them this video?
That video had a positive impact on
Yeah, I can
employees.
see your
Taylor Swift concert tickets. AI safety rules. How much it costs to make America carbon neutral. Why Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. Whether drug pricing middlemen owe you anything. Welcome to American Hearings. Senator Kennedy across multiple hearings, asking the questions most senators skip, demanding the answers most witnesses dodge, and leaving every room a little more accountable than he found it.
Thank you, Senator Blumenthal. Next up, we have Senator Kennedy and then Senator Hirono.
Mr. Berchtold, am I saying that right?
Yes, Senator, thank you.
Mr. Berchtold, I'm not against big per se. I am against dumb. And the way your company handled the ticket sales for Ms. Swift was a debacle. And whoever in your company was in charge of that ought to be fired. Number two, I hear two things today. I hear some of you saying that that we have an antitrust situation here, and that is wrong from an academic perspective and a consumer protection perspective. I hear others of you saying Live Nation's making too much money and we want some of it. Okay? But I hear all of you saying you care about the consumer, and I take you at your word. So how would you feel about adopting a rule, which it seems to me would satisfy the bot situation? Let's just adopt a rule. Well, strike that. I don't want to make it a suggestion because I want to think it through more. But let me ask you your opinion. You're the experts. What if we adopt a rule that said tickets to a Taylor Swift concert or Mr. Lawrence's band's concert are non-transferable? Now, you're not going to have a problem with bots, okay? If you got a scalper trying to buy 2,000 tickets, they don't want 2,000 tickets. They want a profit. And it'll hold down ticket prices. Why don't we do that? Don't everybody jump in at once.
I mean, I think whether it was that or only transferable at face value, I'm not an expert on the secondary ticketing market, so all I can tell you is that from the artist perspective, we would not make $1 less if that were
Ms.
implemented.
Lawrence, if you care about the consumer, and I hear you say that you do, I'll tell you what the consumer is concerned about. The consumer is not concerned about how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin and whether this is a antitrust violation or not, or the FTC. The consumer is concerned about the price.
Yeah, so I'm saying I think.
So would you support non-transferability, or you can only transfer it at face value?
I mean, I think it's a really interesting question. I'm not an expert
you, Ms.
on
Bradish?
Well, I think non-transferability is making a judgment in lieu of what a customer would make.
I understand what it means. Would you support that?
No.
Okay, how about you, Mr. Newso?
I would respectfully not support such a rule.
Okay. How about you, Mr. Mickelson?
Michelson, but that's good. Yes, Senator, good question. Totally support non-transferability.
Okay, thank you.
Totally.
Next, sir.
We respectfully think transferability is important for consumers.
You think it's important? Is it important for consumers or for the middlemen?
Like, let's say I'm going to a show with Jerry and I buy the tickets. I want to be able to send that ticket to Jerry so that we can go together.
That's the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think there's interesting ways we could use.
A few people may have to eat the ticket. They get sick, they can't go. But most people will think about that before they buy the ticket. Now, if you want to hold down prices, cut out the middlemen and the middle women You want to cut out bots, make it non-transferable or transferable only at price, at face value. Couldn't a major artist, couldn't a Bruce Springsteen say, whose music I love, couldn't he say, look, I've got market power. I'm going to set this price for the ticket. I'm going to set this price for the service fee, and it's going to be non-transferable. Couldn't an artist do that with market power?
For sure. Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea, and
Problem solved.
Some artists have done that.
Problem solved.
For sure.
How about that, Mr. Burkholdt?
Yes, Senator, we would fully support an artist's right to make their shows
Didn't ask that.
non-transferable.
Do you support non-transferability or not?
We would support non-transferability, yes.
Well, then why isn't a big part of the problem just solved? Okay? If you care about the consumer, you're going to hold the price down. You're going to cut out the middleman. Now, we still have the problem of some of your colleagues say you're making too much money. Some of them say, I hear them say, you're making too much money and we want some of it. I hear others saying, you're making too much money and that's hurting the consumer because those fees get passed on. If you care about the consumer, cap the price. Cut out the bots. Cut out the middle people. And if you really care about the consumer, give the consumer a break. Not every kid can afford whatever it is, $500 to go see Taylor Swift. And I'd like to see Ms. Swift or Mr. Springsteen or some of the other major artists step up and say, you know what? We're going to support non-transferability. And we're going to cap the fees that are added on here. And we're going to make sure that the artist is paid a fair price. Everybody else can make a profit, but you can't make an obscene profit, especially the scalpers. If we do that, now we've done something. Now we've gone beyond how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pin and whether the FTC ought to be involved. And we know fully well that'll happen sometime in the next century. And whether something's a technical violation of the antitrust law, which we have to go litigate.
Okay.
My work here is done.
Senator Hirono.
Dr. Litterman, do you believe, based on your observation, you seem to be a very intelligent, well-informed man, based on your observation of Mr. Xi Jinping, that Mr. Xi Jinping will ever do anything that is inconsistent with China's best interests in the name of global climate change?
I understand that China has a federal carbon tax.
Okay. Yeah, but faced with a policy, okay, where China does something that's not in its best interest, but it does it because it's in the global best interest. Do you think President Xi would do that?
I think that President Xi understands that we have to work together to address this global problem. Yes, I do. And it will be in the best interest of China to work with the United States to address this problem.
So you think the answer is yes?
I think the answer is that it's in China's best interest to work with the rest of the world to address this problem, as it is in the United States' best interest to work with the rest of the world to address this problem, to create harmonized incentives to reduce emissions.
Do you believe in the tooth fairy?
No, sir.
Do you believe in the Easter Bunny?
No, sir.
Do you believe that Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
No, sir.
Okay.
Next, followed by Senator Braun. And for the record, for people who came late, we actually have a third witness who happens to not be visible because he's with us electronically, but it's Mark Carney, who was the former chief of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Litterman, how long have you been studying climate change and possible solutions?
Studying, well, you know, I was the head of risk management at Goldman Sachs. I didn't worry too much about climate change at that time.
If you would, Doctor.
How many years? Let's say 15.
All right, how about you, Dr. Holtz-Eakin?
About 25.
Okay. Dr. Litterman, How much will it cost to make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050?
I don't know, sir.
So you're advocating we do these things, but you don't know the ultimate cost?
Yes, absolutely. I certainly don't know the ultimate cost, and it's very uncertain. It depends
Dr.
on,
Holtz-Eakin, do
it
you know how
depends
much it
on
will cost to
innovations, it depends on,
I understand. I'm just trying to lay a foundation here to understand your expert testimony. Dr. Holtz-Eakin, do you know how much it will cost to make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050?
Depends how you do it. If we do it all in the federal budget with directed things, it'll be
Public and
super
private
expensive.
dollars.
Sorry?
Public and private dollars. It's ultimately private dollars anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
So how much?
You're going to look at $50 trillion.
$50 trillion. Okay, thank you. If we make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050 by spending $50 trillion, which you're advocating, I gather.
No?
Okay. Then strike that last part. I'm wrong. You're not advocating. You're advocating something.
If you're going to do something, do something smart. That's what I advocated.
Okay. If we spend $50 trillion to make the United States of America carbon neutral by 2050, how much will that lower world temperatures?
I can't answer that because we don't know what China and India and the rest of the globe has done.
Okay. Have you heard anybody from the Biden administration say how much it will lower world temperatures?
No.
Does anybody know how much it will lower world temperatures? No?
No one can know for sure.
Okay. Dr. Litterman,
yes.
if we spend $50 trillion, or however much it takes, to make the United States carbon neutral by 2050, how much will it lower world temperatures?
Senator, that depends on the rest of the world. We have to work with the rest of the world. We're in this together.
Well,
it's one world. We can't
what
build
if-
a wall around the United States and say,
what if we spend $50 trillion, Europe cooperates, most Western democracies cooperate, but India and China don't? How much will our $50 trillion lower world temperature?
we're in this together. Senator, we
How
have to
much
get
will-
the world to
do you-
work together.
How much, I get that.
Okay.
How much will it lower world temperatures?
If China and India do not help.
Yes.
I don't know.
Okay. Dr. Litterman, do you believe, based on your observation, you seem to be a very intelligent, well-informed man, based on your observation of Mr. Xi Jinping, that Mr. Xi Jinping will ever do anything that is inconsistent with China's best interests in the name of global climate change?
I understand that China has a federal carbon tax.
Okay. Yeah, but faced with a policy, okay, where China does something that's not in its best interest, but it does it because it's in the global best interest. Do you think President Xi would do that?
I think that President Xi understands that we have to work together to address this global problem. Yes, I do. And it will be in the best interest of China to work with the United States to address
So you
this
think
problem.
the answer is yes?
I think the answer is that it's in China's best interest to work with the rest of the world to address this problem, as it is in the United States' best interest to work with the rest of the world to address this problem, to create harmonized incentives to
Do you
reduce
believe
emissions.
in the tooth fairy?
No, sir.
Do you believe in the Easter Bunny?
No, sir.
Do you believe that Jimmy Hoffa died of natural causes?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Braun.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been here first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. Chairman Barr, the Federal Reserve rather stress tested 34 banks in 2022. Is that correct?
Senator, I don't have the exact number in front of me, but that
Well,
sounds,
I have your
that
report.
sounds, that
I have
sounds
your
correct.
report. It says 34. And the cutoff was $100 billion. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. You didn't stress test Silicon Valley Bank, did you?
No, under the Federal Reserve Board's rules that were put in place for transition into the stress testing, it takes a while for a firm to be considered above the threshold. Yeah. They need to have a rolling four-quarter average.
Did you stress test Silicon Valley Bank in 2022?
No.
Okay. Silicon Valley Bank had $100 billion, more than $100 billion in assets at the end of 2021, did it not?
Senator, as I was explaining, the transition rules in place at the time require a rolling four-quarter average to be above that amount.
Okay.
And then if the firm happens to be in a year that isn't the year that, since it's an every other year test, that a test is running, then it waits till the next year. So for Silicon Valley Bank, that would have meant 2024 would be its first stress test.
But the point is, you didn't test Silicon Valley Bank.
We did not apply a stress test to Silicon Valley Bank. It was, of course, using its own stress test.
Did you have the authority to do it?
Under our existing regulations, no. We would have to change our regulations to have that authority.
Under the Congress's amendment to Dodd-Frank, Senator Crapo talked about it, 2155, Section 252.3. Isn't it a fact that we gave the Federal Reserve the authority to stress test Silicon Valley Bank?
Under that legislation, the Federal Reserve could have put in place a rule defining the word periodic,
but you
in a different way than was done.
Right, but you didn't, did you?
The Federal Reserve did not do that.
Okay. If you had stress tests, let me put it this way. If you had stress tested Silicon Valley Bank in 2022, it wouldn't have made any difference, would it?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Well, you didn't test for Silicon Valley Bank's problem. I've read your report. You stress tested these 34 banks for falling GDP, spike in unemployment, and defaults in commercial real estate. Isn't that correct?
Yes, in a typical adverse scenario for banks, we're testing falling interest rate
environments. But that wasn't our problem in 2022.
I completely agree with you.
It's not our problem today. The problem is inflation, high interest rate, and loss of value in government bonds, isn't it?
I completely agree with you.
So you stress tested in 2022 for the wrong thing.
The stress test is not the primary way that the Federal Reserve or other regulators test for interest rate risk.
But you stress tested for the wrong thing.
As I said, Senator, I agree with you that it would be useful to test for higher rising interest rates. That's why in our alternative scenario, multiple scenario that we put in place for this year's stress test, we do that. These decisions were made before I arrived, but I agree with you that it would be better to do that.
But it's like somebody going in for a test for COVID and getting a test for cholera, isn't it?
I don't know enough about either of those tests to know.
Yeah. Well, they're different. So all this business about, the amendment to Dodd-Frank kept them from stress testing. The way I see it, you chose not to stress test, and if you had stress test Silicon Valley Bank, you wouldn't have caught the problem.
As I said, Senator, I agree with you that the statute requires periodic stress testing. The Federal Reserve made a decision about how to implement that in 2019.
Right.
That resulted in SVB not being planned to be tested until 2024. But as I said, the stress test requirements...
You knew from the... I'm sorry to cut you off, but the chairman's going to cut me off in a second. But you knew... The Federal Reserve knew well in advance that Silicon Valley Bank had a problem with holding too much of its money in interest rate-sensitive long government bonds, didn't you?
I think the investing public and the Federal Reserve, which cited it for interest rate risk problems, knew that it had interest rate risk. I think
The Federal
nobody
Reserve didn't do
anticipated a
anything
bank.
about it, did it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear
The
you.
Federal Reserve didn't do anything about it, did it?
I disagree with that, Senator, respectfully. The Federal Reserve did cite these problems to the bank and require them to take action. Bank management failed to act on those.
You didn't follow up,
citations.
did you?
Senator's time has expired. I think that I sit here and watch Mr. Barr reluctant to criticize some of the moves of his predecessors at the Federal Reserve. I'll leave it at that. Senator Smith from Minnesota is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Yagan, yeah, am I saying your name right? Tell me, if you were king for a day and you could rewrite America's tax code, tell me the 3 changes you would make.
Number one, I would equalize labor and capital tax burdens at the top. There are a couple ways of doing that. The billionaire minimum income tax is one that would move in that direction. I won't rehash those details. Senator Johnson actually talked about a corporate tax integration type.
What's number 2?
Sure. Number 2, part of closing the labor and capital disparity is closing the Gingrich-Edwards loophole. And number 3 is ending abuse of trusts. So the estate tax has been eviscerated. Many of those, you take assets that you know are worth a lot. Right now, they're purportedly worth a little because you haven't taken your company public. You put them into a trust, it explodes.
Do you support a wealth tax? Do you know what I mean by wealth tax?
I do know what you mean by wealth tax. The billionaire minimum income tax taxes income, and that I think is the way forward in that space.
Well, let me be a little more precise. Do you think appreciation of assets that are not sold, unrealized gain, should be taxed?
I think you should have to prepay tax on it that will eventually be due at sale, gift, or bequest.
What do you mean prepay the tax?
Sure. So if I have $5 billion of unrealized capital gains, I have $5 billion of taxable income, and I'm currently paying $1.5 billion on that. So that's a 15% overall tax rate.
Well, let's don't complicate this. I want to understand
Sure.
what you're saying. Let's suppose an American owns a piece of real estate they inherited from their father or their mother. And it was, when they inherited it, they got a step up in basis, it's worth $100,000. And all of a sudden, the interstate came through. And the property is now worth $1 million if they sell it. But they don't plan to sell it. They're going to leave it to the kids. Do you think that Americans should have to pay tax on the unrealized gain, the increase in value?
In general, no. At that level of wealth, for example, housing.
You think only wealthy people should?
At the very top, it's hard to tax,
But let me be sure I understand what you're saying. All right, let's suppose that's not just an average American. Let's suppose that's an American. What do you define as rich?
In the minimum income tax, it's $100 million of wealth or more.
Okay, so you think if you're really wealthy, you should have to pay a tax on your unrealized gain?
I think you should have to partially prepay if you're liquid, if you have liquidity to pay.
Do you think somebody? Why can't you economists answer questions? Should any American have to pay tax on unrealized gain? Why can't you just answer me?
Yes, there are some who should.
Who?
The ultra wealthy who have liquidity should prepay some tax.
What if they don't have liquidity?
They should not have to pay, and they will owe at sale, bequest, or gift.
So if you have cash, you ought to have to pay, but if you don't have to pay?
To prepay. I have in my testimony, there are examples of how this works so that You can preserve incentives to build a new company, take it public.
Okay,
While
what do you
also-
think, Dr. McBride? Do you think we should start taxing unrealized gains? And what do you think that'll do to the economy?
Well, I have several concerns about the approach. The first of which is it's completely untested. It's never been tried in this country. We have more than 100 years of history with the income tax, and
Europe's tried it, haven't they?
no, they've tried wealth taxes.
Yeah.
Their experience
How'd that
with
turn
wealth
out?
taxes has
How
been
did that turn out?
bad. It
Why is
resulted
that?
in a lot of taxpayers exiting the country, for one thing. In France, for instance, other countries that have tried it. And you suddenly lose a big chunk of your tax base that you're trying to tax there. We have that option in this country as well. The result has been that most of those countries in Europe that have tried a wealth tax have rolled them back,
Yeah.
including France, because they were administratively challenging. The basic challenge is what you're describing, trying to value assets without real market transactions. So this is a valuation dispute. It means we get the IRS engaged in yet another challenge. They're currently doing this with the estate tax. Those estates that are subject to the estate tax, those valuation episodes can go years and years and years.
Can I have 30 more seconds?
Proceed.
Dr. Is it Clausing? Clausing?
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you and Dr. Yagan, why do y'all want to punish wealthy people?
I think I can speak for both of us that we're not interested in punishing anyone. We're interested
Well,
in
you're
having
interested
a
in taxing
fiscal
the hell out of them
system.
more than anybody else.
I think
the
what reforms that Professor
what makes you think that making tax policy on the basis of class or status makes sense?
I think it's a very American phenomena that throughout the history of the income tax, we have valued progressivity, and our current income tax does that. We used to rely on things like tariffs to raise revenue. Tariffs are regressive consumption taxes that disproportionately hurt the poor. We believe in this country that those with the greater ability to pay should pay more of the burden. And that's part of what a healthy capitalism does. It enables people to gain from things like trade and technological change and business innovation, and to contribute a little more to the fiscal system when they're very successful in doing so. And I think that that's a very legitimate way to structure the tax system.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why do you think so many wealthy people are leaving New York City?
New York City is, an incredible city of innovation, immigration, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, but why are so many wealthy people leaving?
I think there are big advantages to living near centers of entrepreneurial activity, and we see that on the West
You think they're leaving to be nearer to centers of entrepreneurial activity, do you?
Well, I don't think there are a lot of people, fleeing New York City. That New York City has.
Sure there are. There are thousands. I mean, there have been study after study after study. Why are so many wealthy people leaving New York City?
I think there's an enormous number of wealthy people who are in New York City and continue.
But why are so many leaving?
I can't speak to why particular people
I can
leave.
tell you why.
I know
It's
that-
taxes. You know that as well as I do. It's taxes.
I think if you look at the economic.
Some of it's crime, but most of it is taxes.
Well,
people vote with their feet. The same reason that people are leaving California and moving to Austin.
If you look at California, it's one of the most successful economies in the world, and it continues to be so. It attracts people.
But they're
as
losing
well.
people.
I don't think it's in any danger of decline, nor is New York City. And these are very vibrant places.
I don't think we're going to
for
ever
fundamental
agree.
reasons. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to ever agree. But I appreciate the time of all three of you.
Thank you.
To be fair, there also are people moving the other way. There are people who move to New York. They just don't all leave from New York. It's a two-way street in and out of New York. And it's a two-way street between Austin and California. People leave Texas and go to California, and some of them do very well.
Well, that's true, Sheldon, but I can show you study after study after study, as you well know, and as the professor knows, that shows that people are leaving high-tax states and moving to low-tax states. All you have to do is
Well, they also leave.
all you have to do is look at the demographics. Pick the 9 states that have, say, a state income tax, and compare that that don't have a state income tax and compare that to the states that do. It's called tax avoidance, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly legal.
People have different preferences. You know, if you look at where immigrants choose to live in the United States, they often go to those same places that you were talking about. You know, so I do think that, you know, there's movement in both directions.
Yeah, but here's my point. Here's what I think rational people do, and here's what I bet all three of you would do, and I bet Sheldon would do it because he's a smart guy. Okay, if he won the lottery tomorrow and won $10 million and paid his taxes and has $6 million left, he's going to at least consider, you are too, moving to Florida because they don't have a state income tax.
For the record, no, I wouldn't. Never crossed my mind.
Well, most rational, well, I don't mean you're irrational, Sheldon, you know that. But,
It can be quite rational to not want to live in Florida right now.
when you're liquid, and you don't have to pay a 6% off the top versus 0%, it's a rational economic move, is it not?
I agree. It's rational. I mean, the thing about taxes that we're talking about is they're a cost or a price, and so claiming that this cost or price doesn't matter is essentially throwing out the very basic law of demand, the basic fundamental idea in economics that prices matter, that costs matter.
See, this is what this always boils down to, and there's no way we'll ever agree. Okay. But at least two of you believe that government, all things being equal, can spend a dollar better than people can. And that's your this is America. You can believe that.
For the record, that's not in their testimony.
I just don't agree with you. I think people can spend the dollar better, all things being equal. And all you have to do, if you know the history of government, you know that I'm right. But I don't expect you to agree with me because you're professors. Okay? Thanks, Sheldon.
Always entertaining. Senator Kennedy, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here today. Professor Goodwin, help me understand your point of view. I think this is a yes or no question. Do you support it being legal to abort an unborn child up to the moment of birth?
Senator Kennedy, it is not a yes or no question. I support women like Ms. Zarowski. Women across this...
No, ma'am, I don't... I think it is a yes or no question.
No, well, let me answer.
If there were a law that's... I'm just trying to understand your perspective, and I'm not accusing you of this.
Of course not.
But you know, people sort of talk around this issue. If there were a bill that said that a woman has an unfettered right to abort an unborn baby for any reason up to the moment of birth, would you vote yes or would you vote no?
Senator Kennedy, I refuse to be shackled by your question. What I have answered is that there are conditions that occur during pregnancy.
You don't know whether you would vote yes or no?
There are conditions during pregnancy that mean after 10 weeks,
no,
14 weeks,
I said
20 weeks,
discretion.
24 weeks,
you
conditions
would
such as Ms. Zarowski.
You're here advocating.
I would support her life.
I
would support her
too,
personhood.
But you're advocating a law.
I support her personhood.
You're advocating a law that says that an unborn baby can be aborted up to the moment of birth for any reason, are you not?
Let me clarify what the 14th Amendment says in the first sentence, that citizens of this United States are individuals that are born. That is what our Constitution says.
But why won't you answer my question, Professor? I'm not trying to argue. I just want to understand what your position is, and I think you're afraid to say that you do support that. If you do support it, I think you, just for the purpose of an intellectual discussion, you ought to just say so.
For purposes of an intellectual discussion, I'm happy to have that with you, but
Well, then,
that's not the tone of...
could you answer my question? Do you support, please? I mean, you teach. Okay, I'm sure you've had students ask this question. Do you support making it legal to abort an unborn baby for any reason, up to the moment before birth?
Senator, let's have that intellectual discussion that you want.
We could start if you'd answer my question. I can't go to my next question until you answer that question.
I want you to be able to go to your second
good.
and your third
Answer it for
questions.
me.
I do. But as I have explained, there are many different conditions.
No, I said
during
unfettered
a
discretion, no conditions. I'm making it easy for you.
Well, I've already shared with you, Senator, that I
get
support
it.
women's
I don't want to use all my time. You're not going to
and I
answer
support
it,
Ms.
and that is your
Orozco's
right. But I
personhood.
would respect you more if you just say, "Here's my
I'm
answer."
sorry that you don't respect me very
I do respect
much.
you, but I said I'd respect you more if you just answer my question. Doctor, tell me how to say your last name. Ms. Dr. Rubenhorst. Do you support a law that would allow, for any reason, unfettered discretion, the abortion of an unborn child up until the moment of birth?
No.
You don't. Dr. Verma?
Senator Kennedy, so I'm the one doctor in this room that does provide abortion care, and I can tell you that does not reflect the reality of abortion
I
care.
understand. I'm just asking the question.
It simply doesn't
But do you
happen.
support it? There are bills before Congress that will allow that to happen. You don't support it, or are you going to not
again,
answer my question?
As the doctor in this room who does provide abortion care, that is not how abortion care in this country works. It's a hypothetical that does a disservice
But if a
to our
patient came to you
patient.
and said, I'm going to probably have a baby this week and I've changed my mind, and I would like you, doctor, to abort the child, would you do it?
That is not how abortion care in
But
this
if
country works.
a patient did, would you do it?
My job as a doctor is to look at each individual situation.
I mean,
but
I'm
have
sorry, I don't
never-
mean to be rude, but I can tell neither you nor the professor will answer my question.
have
think
nev-
you both have an opinion, and I don't understand why you won't share it. We're going to solve this problem.
I've provided care for a few years, and I've never seen that situation.
How about you, Doc? Would you?
Do not support unfettered abortion, and I would like to point out that if a woman did have a life-threatening condition in pregnancy past approximately 22 weeks, that baby can be delivered alive by induction or C-section, and we can try to save that baby. The intent of abortion is a dead baby, and that is not necessary in that situation.
I mean, I want you to all understand where I'm coming from. This is a tough issue. And it's a tough issue because there's some tough questions we've got to answer. And when you won't answer the questions, when you're invited by my Democratic friends, the majority, and you won't answer the most fundamental question, we've got a bill in front of us that will basically say a woman has the unfettered right to abort at any time for any reason up to the moment of birth. And that's a gut check issue. And I would expect you as experts to answer that truthfully, how you do it. Thank you for your indulgence, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Ossoff?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all of the witnesses for joining us and sharing your experiences and perspective. It's been tremendously impactful to hear from you. And Mr. Chairman, I do want to note and acknowledge that we have a Georgia physician with us, and Dr. Verma. Thank you for your work providing health care for Georgia women at a time when
University of Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate your passion. Mr. Tisler, do you think the federal government should be making it more expensive to build affordable housing?
Absolutely not, sir.
Well, it is. To build a home, of course, I think we can agree on this requires money. And the people who loan that money, of course, expect to be paid back. And they expect to protect their collateral, which is the affordable home. The mortgagee, or the person who loans the money, oftentimes requires that the homeowner carry insurance. Can we agree on that?
Yes, sir.
And more, the mortgagee, the person loaning the money, requires the homeowner to carry flood insurance. Yet, while you are here advocating, as we all are, for affordable housing, our federal government, through FEMA, is working as hard as it can to increase the cost of flood insurance. FEMA hired a company called Milliman to write a new algorithm, which Milliman says can look at every individual home in the United States and predict its flood risk over the next 30 years. Amazing. There's just one problem. They won't share with anyone the algorithm. And as a result of that algorithm, national flood insurance costs have gone, I'll give you the national figure, from $808 to $1,808. Now, I'll give you some concrete examples. In my state, we call counties parishes. St. Mary Parish, the median household income is $40,000 roughly. The new flood insurance rate in St. Mary Parish is $5,226 a year as a result of FEMA's actions. That doesn't include homeowners. That doesn't include property taxes. That doesn't include liability insurance. That's flood. Now, how can you build an affordable home for someone when they have to pay half of the cost of the home, when you add up all this insurance they have to carry, in insurance?
Senator, I can't speak to FEMA because I don't know how they arrive at that.
Yes, but I guess that was an unfair question. Why aren't the three of you, I'm not criticizing you, I may make this a general suggestion. Why don't you take a look at what FEMA's doing to the cost of building an affordable home in America? Because you're not going to have any. There's no free lunch, and you don't get one now. I mean, they're making it impossible to build affordable housing in America. And I think the three of you respectfully ought to take a look at that and the impact on affordable housing in our country. Ms. Ginnell, did I say your name right?
It's Yantel. Thank you.
Yantel, I'm sorry. You talked about zoning.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take California, for example. I don't mean to pick on California. I love California. It's a beautiful state. It's very expensive to own a home there. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
So people, when they buy a home, working people, poor and middle class, not many people poor can afford to buy a home, it costs so much that their home becomes their 401k. They can't save anything. I mean, they have to put the money into equity in their home. And so they want to protect the value of that home. And they communicate that to their elected officials. So their elected officials, despite what they say, make it very difficult through their zoning decisions to build affordable housing, despite their left of center politics. Isn't that what's going on?
That's absolutely true. And California is a prime example of what happens when very restrictive local zoning ordinances prevent the construction of any type of housing, multifamily housing, and especially affordable housing. And the result is that it drives up costs for everyone, and it certainly squeezes the lowest income renters the most. But California is not alone. This is a pattern that.
No,
we
but
see
it's the best
throughout the
example,
country.
isn't it?
It is a prime example, yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr., is it Clausing? Clausing?
Yes.
Yeah. Why do you and Dr. Yegan, why do y'all want to punish wealthy people?
I think I can speak for both of us that we're not interested in punishing anyone. We're interested
Well,
in
you're
having
interested
a
in taxing
fiscal
the hell out of them
system.
more than anybody else.
I think
the
what
makes you think that making tax policy on the basis of class or status makes sense?
I think it's a very American phenomena that throughout the history of the income tax, we have valued progressivity, and our current income tax does that. We used to rely on things like tariffs to raise revenue. Tariffs are regressive consumption taxes that disproportionately hurt the poor. We believe in this country that those with the greater ability to pay should pay more of the burden. And that's part of what a healthy capitalism does. It enables people to gain from things like trade and technological change and business innovation, and to contribute a little more to the fiscal system when they're very successful in doing so. And I think that that's a very legitimate way to structure the tax system.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why do you think so many wealthy people are leaving New York City?
New York City is, an incredible city of innovation, immigration, entrepreneurship.
Yeah, but why are so many wealthy people leaving?
I think there are big advantages to living near centers of entrepreneurial activity, and we see that on the West
You think
Coast
they're
as well.
leaving to be nearer to centers of entrepreneurial activity, do you?
Well, I don't think there are a lot of people, fleeing New York City. That New York City has.
Sure there are. There are thousands. I mean, there have been study after study after study. Why are so many wealthy people leaving New York City?
I think there's an enormous number of wealthy people who are in New York City and continue.
But why are so many leaving?
I can't speak to why particular people.
I can
leave.
tell you why.
know
It's
that-
taxes. You know that as well as I do. It's taxes.
I think if you look at the economic.
Some of it's crime, but most of it is taxes.
Well,
people vote with their feet. The same reason that people are leaving California and moving to Austin.
If you look at California, it's one of the most successful economies in the world, and it continues to be so. It attracts people.
But they're
as
losing
well.
people.
I don't think it's in any danger of decline, nor is New York City. And these are very vibrant places.
I don't think we're going to
for
ever
fundamental
agree.
reasons. Yeah.
I don't think we're going to ever agree. But I appreciate the time of all three of you.
Thank you.
To be fair, there also are people moving the other way. There are people who move to New York. They just don't all leave from New York. It's a two-way street in and out of New York. And it's a two-way street between Austin and California. People leave Texas and go to California, and some of them do very well.
Well, that's true, Sheldon, but I can show you study after study after study, as you well know, and as the professor knows. It shows that people are leaving high-tax states and moving to low-tax states. All you have to do is
Well, they also leave.
all you have to do is look at the demographics. Pick the 9 states that have, say, a state income tax, and compare that, or that don't have a state income tax, and compare that to the states that do. It's called tax avoidance, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly legal.
People have different preferences. If you look at where immigrants choose to live in the United States, they often go to those same places that you were talking about. So I do think that, there's movement in both directions.
Yeah, but here's my point.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what I think rational people do, and here's what I bet all three of you would do, and I bet Sheldon would do it because he's a smart guy. Okay, if he won the lottery tomorrow and won $10 million and paid his taxes and has $6 million left, he's going to at least consider, you are too, moving to Florida because they don't have a state income tax.
For the record, no, I wouldn't. Never crossed my mind.
Well, I don't mean you're irrational, Sheldon, you know that. But,
it can be quite rational to not want to live
when
in
you're
Florida
liquid,
right now.
when you're liquid, and you don't have to pay a 6% off the top versus 0%, it's a rational economic move, is it not?
I agree. It's rational. I mean, the thing about taxes that we're talking about is they're a cost or a price. And so claiming that this cost or price doesn't matter is essentially throwing out the very basic law of demand, the basic fundamental idea in economics that prices matter, that costs matter.
See, this is what this always boils down to, and there's no way we'll ever agree, okay? But at least two of you believe that government, all things being equal, can spend a dollar better than people can. And that's your this is America. You can believe that.
For the record, that's not in their testimony.
I just don't agree with you. I think people can spend the dollar better, all things being equal. And all you have to do, if you know the history of government, you know that I'm right. But I don't expect you to agree with me because you're professors. Thank you, Madam Chair. Could you put that up for me right quick? Yes, sir. Thank you, ma'am. General, I know you can't see that, but it's a page from your website, and let me read you the relevant sentence. It says the Mississippi River and Tributaries Project, which of course is how we pay for flood control and levees. The Mississippi River and Tributaries Project has prevented more than $1.5 trillion, not billion, trillion, in flood damages since 1928, or $95 for every $1 invested. This is from your website. How was this compiled, that data compiled, General?
Yes, sir. So it's simply taking the cost of the project and comparing it to the benefits that you're describing. Structure saved, acres preserved, recreation opportunities. So it's a comparison between the simple math between the cost and benefits.
So you have the ability at the core, your economists and others, to calculate losses, potential losses.
Yes, sir, we do.
And what this is telling me is that without the Corps of Engineers' work, funded as I described, with respect to levees and flood control, the American people would have sustained damages of $1.5 trillion. Is that right?
Yes, sir, I believe that's correct.
Okay. Here's what I'm getting at, General. If you have this ability, and I believe you do, I'm not suggesting that this isn't accurate. I'm very grateful that this is accurate, and I'm very grateful to the Corps. But if your folks have this ability to put a value on the potential losses that we are averting, why doesn't that play a bigger role in your cost-benefit analysis when you're looking at the feasibility of a project?
Yes, sir. So this is clearly is a great question. Clearly something the Corps has to get better on in comprehensive benefits. So I'll just give you two areas, sir, where we are trying to improve. We have a number of flood risk management projects and navigation projects that have a national security implication. We're working on one in North Dakota in Minot. You could use the Sioux Locks as an example. The Port of Nome in Alaska, it's a remote and subsistence harbor, but the Coast Guard and Navy can use that. So we're challenged on those type of projects to quantify the national security benefit. We have flood risk management projects today in Selma, Alabama, or in Princeville, North Carolina, that preserve cultural and historic properties, and we struggle to put a monetary value on that. But it's something with the Secretary's leadership, sir, we absolutely get it. It's something we have to improve upon.
Well, General, I misspoke. I said 1.5 trillion. The real figure is 2.7 trillion, which your work has prevented $2.7 trillion in damages. And your economists, you stand by that number, I assume.
Yes, sir.
And your economists have a way to come up with that number.
That's correct.
It just makes no sense to me if we can quantify the losses that would be prevented by building a flood control project, that we wouldn't make that one of the determining factors in the cost-benefit analysis. I mean, I gave you the statistic. The Morganza to the Gulf levee system prevented damage, flooding to 12,000 homes. And you can quantify that. Don't you think we ought to change the formula a little bit?
Well, so the way you're describing a loss prevented is a benefit of these projects. The Morganza example, I would argue, sir, we have many of those. We have many Morganzas across the country that we have to get better on in resourcing. Yes,
I'm going to ask you one quick question the time I have left. The price of the Comet River Diversion Canal has gone up $500 million. How? I know inflation, but wow.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
What are we going to do about that?
Sir, you've got inflation down. The thing that we're taking on, this is a great example where we have to get better at communicating to the committees and to Congress and administration the cost estimates that we give you in a chief's report in paragraph 11. And we give you a number with some decimal points on it for a project that may be constructed down the road, but what we don't give you is the percent design that cost estimate is based on. So in a 3x3 study, a district might get to a 10% level design, or a 4-year study, they might get to 25%. And then as that design is mature, like it is now today in COMET, you're finding that there are additional requirements that we get as we get deeper into the geotech and to the sizing of some of these structures. That's what we're experiencing here, and it's something we've got to get better on in communicating to you and others.
How do we get that number? We got a hell of a mess here, General. Okay, my people expected this to be done. We brought it in on time. I mean, and then all of a sudden, bam, $500 million. How are we going to get this price down?
Sir, you have our commitment that we're going to work through this. We're committed to finishing this. I don't have all the answers here today. I can share my commitment that we will get this done.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Heinrich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioner Tootin, I want to ask you about how you're balancing the drought relief efforts across the West. And I think it's clear that as reservoir levels in the Colorado Basin have dropped, it's really captured the attention of the country. But for the Colorado Basin,
on April 4th, 2019, the American Civil Liberties Union paid for Justice Sotomayor's trip to San Juan, Puerto Rico. You ever been to San Juan, Mr. Fogel? Is it expensive?
I keep forgetting. Well, it depends when you go.
Yeah. How much you think it costs to go down there?
Depends whether you fly first class or economy.
What if you fly first class?
Oh, probably a couple $1,000s.
Okay.
Yeah.
The ACLU, do they have cases in front of the Supreme Court?
All the time.
They do, all the time?
Sure.
Do you think the ACLU was trying to bribe Justice Sotomayor?
No, sir, I don't.
I don't either. I don't either. But that's the unstated premise of all of this.
Well, Senator, if I
all
may...
these articles about Justice Clarence Thomas and the Chief Justice in the United States and Justice Gorsuch, who sold an interest in an LLC to a Democratic donor who had never met, that they bought him, isn't it?
May I say something in response, Senator? I think there are two things going on here today. I think there is a political conflict, which is, as I said earlier, it's very intense. It's hyper-partisan. Both sides have things to say. And then I think there's an ethical issue.
When you accuse people of being bribed, it kind of gets their attention.
Sir, hold on a second. I'm not accusing anybody of being bribed. I'm not.
But some people are.
Some people are. The reason I'm here is I think that there is an ethical issue that, as Senator Graham said earlier, it would be good for the court to think about in terms of being more transparent. That is what I care about. That's the only thing I care about. There's a lot of political back and forth. It's very interesting. I'm interested in it as a citizen of the United States. But I think the most useful thing that this or any other committee could do is think about how do we make our institutions...
Well, how are you going to do that in the context, though, of one of our leaders, for whom I have great respect, going on the steps of the United States Supreme Court, telling two justices if they vote in a way he doesn't like, they will pay the price and reap the whirlwind. And you have another one of your witnesses here tweeting out stuff saying, quote, some justices are politicians in robes who thrive in a system where access and influence are for sale.
Yeah.
He said they were bought like a sack of potatoes.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on that, Senator. That's not anything I had anything to do with. So,
Did I hear the gavel?
thank you.
I hope. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Hirono? I'm sorry, I got it wrong. Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal.
Ms. I can't see your name. I can't see.
Hopper.
Ms. Hopper. Ms. Hopper, I love solar energy. I just want you to know that. And I love electric cars. But I got to ask you this question. I've been waiting to ask this. If electric cars are so swell, how come government has to pay people to drive them?
So I think, as like most government policies, right, are put in place to incent certain behaviors, and so that's part of the policy is that if we want more electric
but if they're
cars,
so swell, why couldn't they, just in a competitive market, people, why wouldn't they be choosing electric cars over internal combustion engine cars?
I think
Why do we have to pay people to drive them?
But I wouldn't characterize it as paying people to drive them, but I would.
Well, sure we are. We're
I would
giving a big old
characterize
tax
it
credit.
as the government having a policy to incent more purchase of electric vehicles.
Okay.
Senator
I'm out of
Stabenow.
time. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Wright and Ms. Hernandez, thank you both for being here. Mr. Wright, do you own a home?
I do.
Do you have a mortgage?
I do.
Does your mortgage company require you to carry homeowner's insurance?
It does.
Okay. Suppose your homeowner's insurer came to you and said, look, Mr. Wright, I can't tell you why, but I'm going to start raising your premium 18% a year because we hired this group called Milliman, and they've come up with this magical algorithm that can take a look at your home, not your neighbor's home, but your home, and predict over the next 30 years your risk every single year of whether you're going to have a fire. And so we're going to start raising your rates 18% a year. We can't tell you how long we're going to stop raising those rates. We can, and we can't explain to you the minimum algorithm because it's secret. If we showed it to you, we'd have to kill you. What would you do?
You know, I get increases in the cost
Would
of
you
my
find
insurance.
try to find a new insurer?
I would ask questions to seek to understand, and I may shop for another insurer.
What if you can't shop? What if there are no other insurers, and your mortgage company says no, you've got to take this insurance?
Well, Senator, I think that as we look at these dimensions, there are pieces of algorithms, as you speak to, that we should be clear and show folks what those pieces are, and we have to understand that it is not
FEMA
a
doesn't. FEMA doesn't.
And
FEMA has rolled out this program. They won't share the algorithm. There are 500,000 flood insurance policies in America. 10% of them are in my state. My people don't have $1 million mansions on the Gulf. These are working people. And their mortgage company requires them to carry flood insurance. Is the only way to get it. For example, in Cameron Parish, the average new cost of flood insurance there is $4,454. The median household income is $48,000.
And the wind
in
insurance
Plaquemines
is high as
Parish,
well.
the new price for insurance is $5,431. The median household income is $65,000. In St. Mary Parish, a new flood insurance policy costs $5,226, and the median household income is $40,218. Now, these people can't afford flood insurance, but they'll have to give up their home if they don't carry it. And if they go to FEMA and say, you raised my premiums 18% this year, how long are you going to keep doing it? They say, we can't tell you that. And these people say to FEMA, my people say to FEMA, have you considered levies, the impact of the levies? And FEMA says, we don't have to answer that. And then my people go to FEMA and they say, well, why are you doing this? Well, we have this new algorithm. And they say, can we see the algorithm to hire somebody to look at the algorithm and see if you're considering levies? And they say, oh no, if we show you the algorithm, we'll have to kill you. And then my people find out that in 2022, in a secret memo that FEMA didn't want to come out, FEMA estimates that 900,000 policyholders, 20% of all the policyholders for flood insurance in the country, they figure they're going to drop their insurance.
Yeah. So, Mr.
Now,
Kennedy,
what's the point of flood insurance if nobody can afford it? And what's the point of having a federal agency paid for with people's taxpayer dollars if they won't explain to the people what they're doing?
So, Senator,
are you still for risk rating 2.0?
So, Senator, I am 5 years removed from making decisions in FEMA. And yes, I was the person who launched Risk Rating 2.0. And so we've had these conversations, and I'm happy to continue to do so.
Well, this isn't personal to you. I don't know what your involvement was, but the people that implemented this and rolled it out in this manner ought to hide their head in a bag.
So I do think that FEMA should be transparent about what they're doing. I also know that these insurance calculations are more like calculus than they are arithmetic, but the risks are growing. The cost of wind insurance in southern Louisiana is just as higher. And so I think there's an affordability need for sure. But we've got to look at this. Yes, FEMA should be showing the pieces. We need to make sure people understand it. I think people need to know which mitigation actions have a difference.
They're not.
And Senator, I
think, you know that. Nor do the people at FEMA seem to care.
All I can say to you is that there are increasing risks. Those costs in some places, I was just in Cameron and Calcasieu Parish last month. I understand this. They're still recovering from Ida and Laura that came through.
I've got to wrap this up. If the IRS came to you and said, I don't know how much money you make. I don't want to know. If the IRS came to you and said, we're going to do your taxes for you this year, Mr. Wright, you owe $4 million in income taxes. Mm-hmm. But we can't tell you how we came up with the figure. You think that'd be fair?
That would not be a fair action by the IRS.
Wouldn't, would it? Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses who have joined us today. Mr. Payne, let me start with you, sir. You're kind of in the middle here. You work for the Campaign Legal Center, is that right?
That's correct.
Is your website campaignlegal.org?
Correct.
Okay. Does not the front page of your website say, I'm going to quote here, I want to get it right, the current U.S. Supreme Court is a threat to our democracy. The current U.S. Supreme Court is a threat to our democracy. Did I read that right?
What I can say is that our organization...
But is that on your website?
I am not certain exactly what's on the website.
Here it is, right here,
okay.
Big as Dallas.
What that refers to is the voting rights voting rights cases of the Supreme Court. Our organization is a voting rights organization that fights for all Americans to have the ability to vote.
Yeah, but you got to click a bunch of times to find that explanation. I just want to make sure I read that correctly. A few months ago, Mr. Payne, you retweeted the following statement. Some justices are politicians in robes who thrive in a system where access and influence are for sale. Some justices are politicians in robes who thrive in a system where access and influence are for sale. Now, that's a pretty bold statement.
I'm sorry, Senator, is that a news article?
No, sir. That's a retweet here. You tweeted this out. Tell me which justices are for sale.
I don't recall that tweet, but...
Here it is. November 21, 2022. Can you tell me which justices are for sale?
No.
Are any of them for sale?
No, the problem is that the American public has a perception that some
Yeah, but
justices may be.
I'm going to establish the point first. I want to know, you tweeted this out. Do you believe that some justices are for sale? And if so, which ones?
No, Senator, I do not believe that justices are for
Then why'd you
sale.
tweet this out?
What, can you provide more context of what that is?
Sure, I'll get you a copy, but here it is. I
Okay.
checked it and triple checked it. You also said less than a month ago that John Roberts, you retweeted this out. John Roberts is a disgrace.
No, I actually.
Not I disagree with Justice Roberts. Well, you didn't call him Chief Justice Roberts. You called him John Roberts.
No, this is,
You retweeted this.
No, Senator, I did not retweet that.
Yes, sir, you did, right here.
I will need to see. Can you provide a copy to me now? But
Sure.
I did not retweet
Can you
that.
tell me why you think Chief Justice Roberts is a disgrace?
I did not say that, did not retweet that.
Oh, okay. Maybe Twitter got it wrong.
Someone got it wrong.
Let me ask you this, because the unstated premise of all this, sometimes it's stated, but the unstated premise of all this is that some justices have been bribed. Let's just cut to the chase. Okay? Now, let me stay with you, Mr. Payne. Well, let me go to Mr. Fogel. I don't want to just pick on you, Mr. Payne. You can be looking up on Twitter where you said those things. On April 4th, 2019, the American Civil Liberties Union paid for Justice Sotomayor's trip to San Juan, Puerto Rico. You ever been to San Juan, Mr. Fogel? Is it expensive?
I keep forgetting. Well, it depends when you go.
Yeah. How much you think it costs to go down there?
Depends whether you fly first class or economy.
What if you fly first class?
Oh, probably a couple $1,000s.
Okay.
Yeah.
The ACLU, do they have cases in front of the Supreme Court?
All the time.
They do, all the time?
Sure.
Do you think the ACLU was trying to bribe Justice Sotomayor?
No, sir, I don't.
I don't either. But that's the unstated premise of all of this.
Well, Senator, if I
all
may...
these articles about Justice Clarence Thomas and the Chief Justice in the United States and Justice Gorsuch, who sold an interest in an LLC to a Democratic donor who had never met, that they bought him, isn't it?
May I say something in
Of
response,
course.
Senator? I think there are two things going on here today. I think there is a political conflict, which is, as I said earlier, it's very intense. It's hyper-partisan. Both sides have things to say. And then I think there's an ethical issue.
When you accuse people of being bribed, it kind of gets their attention.
Sir, hold on a second. I'm not accusing anybody of being bribed. I'm not.
But some people are.
Some people are. The reason I'm here is I think that there is an ethical issue that, as Senator Graham said earlier, it would be good for the court to think about in terms of being more transparent. That is what I care about. That's the only thing I care about. There's a lot of political back and forth. It's very interesting. I'm very interested in it as a citizen of the United States. But I think the most useful thing that this or any other committee could do is think about how do we make our institutions...
Well, how are you going to do that in the context, though, of one of our leaders, for whom I have great respect, going on the steps of the United States Supreme Court, telling two justices if they vote in a way he doesn't like, they will pay the price and reap the whirlwind. And you have another one of your witnesses here tweeting out stuff saying, quote, some justices are politicians in robes who thrive in a system where access and influence are for sale.
Yep.
He said they were bought like a sack of potatoes.
Okay, I'm not going to comment on that, Senator. That's not anything I had anything to do with. So,
Did I hear the gavel?
Thank you.
I hope. Thank you, Senator Kennedy. Senator Hirono? I'm sorry, I got it wrong. Blumenthal. Senator Blumenthal.
Can you play the video for me? Mr. Shea, I want to ask you. Play it.
Let's go.
It still looks like me.
Fortunately and/or unfortunately, yes, it does.
Don't take
Look,
this
the
off
only way
the
we're
ground.
going to do this thing is if we start a bank from scratch. From scratch? You gotta be kidding.
How in the world do you do that? Is there a book, How to Build a Bank for Dummies?
All we have to do is apply to 19 federal and state banking agencies.
Wouldn't it be easier just to go out and buy a bank?
We looked at that, but the prices are too expensive and we'd be stuck with all their legacy issues.
We have to make our own mistakes. But then we'd have nobody to blame but ourselves. We'd have nobody to blame but ourselves. We'd have nobody to blame but
That
ourselves.
is the stupidest thing that I have ever heard. We're sick of the stank of the big mega banks, so we'll start one. It's absurd. What a terrible proposition. Like convincing the world to eat kale. What possible fate will become of our bank other than to diminish and fail?
I happen to know for a fact that won't happen.
Seriously?
Why not? Because
we'll start signature.
Mr. Shea, you're in that video, aren't you?
yes, I'm in that video.
And you showed that video to the public?
That video was designed as a morale boosting.
But did you show it to the public?
It was shown at the employee parties and shown for.
But did the public see it?
They may have seen that, yes.
And you were trying to invite people to take their hard-earned money and entrust it to you to spend it wisely, and you showed them this video?
That video had a positive impact on employees
see your
and
bank went
colleagues
broke.
who enjoyed watching
Your bank went
and
broke.
participating.
How much time did you spend? You conducted pronoun seminars, didn't you? What's a pronoun seminar?
I introduced a seminar organized by 300 of my colleagues, just as I went to ping pong
tell me what it
tournaments.
is. You spent a lot of time doing pronoun seminars, lecturing people about how they ought to use the right pronoun, gender-neutral pronouns, didn't you?
I actually spent no time beyond introducing that
Well, I
seminar.
could show the seminars, but I won't do it.
I was.
What did that have?
Senator Kennedy, your time has expired. Senator Reid from Rhode Island.
Thank you very much, Mr.
Never
Chairman.
mind for being here, Mr. Becker. When interest rates go up, the price of government bonds, especially long-term, long maturity government bonds, goes down, doesn't it?
Yes.
And you don't have to be Einstein's cousin to know that, do you?
No, you don't.
Okay. Now, your bank had 55% of its assets invested in government bonds, didn't it?
Roughly, yes.
And the Federal Reserve raised interest rates, didn't it?
Yes, it did.
And the value of your assets went down dramatically, didn't they?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And you didn't have hedges, did you?
Senator, as previously mentioned, the decision around hedges was made by our Asset Liability Committee.
Mr. Becker, you were the CEO of the bank. You didn't have hedges, did you?
Senator, there were hedges that were put in place, but I don't recall the details around when they were put in place. and
You're the
when they were taken.
CEO and you had 55% of your assets in government bonds, and you don't know whether you were hedged or not?
Senator, as previously mentioned, I don't have access to my SVB documents, so
Well,
I don't know.
I know that, and I wasn't CEO. You weren't hedged. Now, if you'd bought those hedges, that would have cut into your profits, wouldn't it?
Senator, I don't know the details of the decisions that the team were evaluating.
But if you bought a hedge, the hedge cost money, and it would have decreased your profits, wouldn't it? Do hedges cost money?
Yes, they do.
And so if you bought hedges, you'd have less money, right?
Senator, it depends upon, yes, they would cost money, but it depends upon how the hedges
And if
were
you'd made less money, that would have affected your bonus, wouldn't it?
Senator, our compensation was predominantly long-term in nature. And so I know there's been lots of discussions about compensation being short-term.
Mr. Becker, you made a really stupid bet that went bad, didn't you?
Senator,
and the taxpayers of America had to pick up the tab for your stupidity, didn't they?
Senator, there were a series of events, unprecedented events that occurred that led us to where we are today.
No, this wasn't unprecedented. This was bone deep, down to the marrow, stupid. You put all your eggs in one basket. You put all your eggs in one basket. And unless you were living on the International Space Station, you could see that interest rates were rising and you weren't hedged. Thank you all for being here. Permit me to share with you 3 hypotheses that I would like you to assume for the moment to be true. Hypothesis number 1. Many members of Congress do not understand artificial intelligence. Hypothesis number 2. That absence of understanding may not prevent Congress from plunging in with enthusiasm and trying to regulate this technology in a way that could hurt this technology. Hypothesis number 3 that I would like you to assume. There is likely a berserk wing of the artificial intelligence community that intentionally or unintentionally could use artificial intelligence to kill all of us and hurt us the entire time that we are dying. Assume all of those to be true. Please tell me in plain English 2 or 3 reforms, regulations, if any, that you would implement if you were queen or king for a day. Ms. Montgomery.
I think it comes back again to transparency and explainability in AI. We absolutely need to know and have companies attest.
What do you mean by transparency?
So disclosure of the data that's used to train AI, disclosure of the model and how it performs, and making sure that there's continuous governance over these models, that we are the leading edge in terms of that regulation. Technology governance, organizational governance, rules and clarification that are needed that this Congress.
I mean, this is your chance, folks, to tell us how to get this right. Please use it.
Right. I mean, I think, again, the rules should be focused on the use of AI in certain contexts. So if you look at, for example, so if you look at the EU AI Act, it has certain uses of AI that it says are just simply too dangerous and will be outlawed in the
Okay, so we ought to first pass a law that says you can use AI for these uses but not others. Is that what you're saying?
We need to define the highest risk uses of AI.
Is there anything else?
And then, of course, requiring things like impact assessments and transparency, requiring companies to show their work, protecting data that's used to train AI in the first place as well.
Right. Professor Marcus, if you could be specific, this is your shot, man. Talk in plain English and tell me what, if any, rules we ought to implement. And please don't just use concepts. I'm looking for specificity.
Number 1, a safety review like we use with the FDA prior to widespread deployment. If you're going to introduce something to 100 million people, somebody has to have their eyeballs on it.
There you go. Okay, that's a good one.
Number,
I'm not sure I agree with it, but that's a good one. What else?
You didn't ask for 3 that you would agree with. Number 2, a nimble monitoring agency to follow what's going on, not just pre-review, but also post as things are out there in the world, with authority to call things back, which we've discussed today. And number 3 would be funding geared towards things like AI constitution, AI that can reason about what it's doing. I would not leave things entirely to current technology, which I think is poor at behaving in ethical fashion and behaving in honest fashion. And so I would have funding to try to basically focus on AI safety research. That term has a lot of complications in my field. There's both safety, let's say short-term and long-term, and I think we need to look at both. And rather than just funding models to be bigger, which is the popular thing to do, we need to fund models to be more trustworthy.
Because I want to hear from Mr. Altman. Mr. Altman, here's your shot.
Thank you, Senator. Number 1, I would form a new agency that licenses any effort above a certain scale of capabilities and can take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. Number 2, I would create a set of safety standards focused on what you said in your third hypothesis as the dangerous capability evaluations. One example that we've used in the past is looking to see if a model can self-replicate and self-exfiltrate into the wild. We can give your office a long other list of the things that we think are important there, but specific tests that a model has to pass before it can be deployed into the world. And then third, I would require independent audits. So not just from the company or the agency, but experts who can say the model is or isn't in compliance with these stated safety thresholds and these percentages of performance on question X or Y.
Can you send me that information?
We will do that.
Would you be qualified to if we promulgated those rules, to administer those rules?
I love my current job.
Cool. Are there people out there that would be qualified?
We'd be happy to send you recommendations for people out there, yes.
Okay. You make a lot of money, do you?
No. I'm paid enough for health insurance. I have no equity in OpenAI.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You need a lawyer.
I need a what?
You need a lawyer or an agent.
I'm doing this because I love it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Kennedy. Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listening to all of...
I want to hear from Mr. Altman. Mr. Altman, here's your shot.
Thank you, Senator. Number 1, I would form a new agency that licenses any effort above a certain scale of capabilities and can take that license away and ensure compliance with safety standards. Number 2, I would create a set of safety standards focused on what you said in your third hypothesis as the dangerous capability evaluations. One example that we've used in the past is looking to see if a model can self-replicate and self-exfiltrate into the wild. We can give your office a long other list of the things that we think are important there, but specific tests that a model has to pass before it can be deployed into the world. And then third, I would require independent audits. So not just from the company or the agency, but experts who can say the model is or isn't in compliance with these stated safety thresholds and these percentages of performance on question X or Y.
Can you send me that information?
We will do that.
Would you be qualified to if we promulgated those rules, to administer those rules?
I love my current job.
Cool. Are there people out there that would be qualified?
We'd be happy to send you recommendations for people out there, yes.
Okay. You make a lot of money, do you?
No. I'm paid enough for health insurance. I have no equity in OpenAI.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting. You need a lawyer.
I need a what?
You need a lawyer or an agent.
I'm doing this because I love it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Kennedy. Senator Hirono.
Mr. Carr, I hope the only reason that you're going to appear on CNN is for the quality of your peaches. Senator Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that America was born on a farm. And you can't operate a farm without workers. We can't feed ourselves or our world's neighbors without farm workers. And sometimes we need help from neighbors who live in foreign countries. Is that a fair statement, Mr. Costa?
Yes, I believe immigrants play an important role.
Mr. Costa, do you believe that illegal immigration is illegal?
Under the statutes, yes.
Okay. Mr. Sakara, am I saying your name right? Do you agree with that statement?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Costa, what grade, A, B, C, D, F, would you give President Biden's administration on combating illegal immigration?
I don't know what grade I would put it. I think they've made some useful improvements, but you know, I think that the border there's so much money going to the border that I think the border is mostly secure. People are mostly turning themselves in. They're not really crossing the border without authorization.
You can't give a grade? You're an expert on immigration, and you can't give a grade?
Oh, I guess if I had to, I'd probably be about a C, right in the middle somewhere.
A C or a D?
A C, because they kept some Trump policies in place. They've made some improvements. They're
Right.
sort of in between.
Okay, how about you, Mr. Sakura?
Are we grading on a curve, Senator?
No, sir.
I would be generous and say a D minus.
Okay, all right. Can we agree that either President Biden's administration believes in open borders, or the person that he has put in charge of making immigration policy is not qualified to manage a food truck?
I would fully reject the notion that the Biden administration believes in open borders.
Okay, how about you, Mr. Secure?
At the risk of being too lawyerly, I might be interested in the definition of open borders. I think it's certainly fair to say there is a lack of significant enforcement at the border. And in fact, my clients who
let me try to put a finer point on it. Right now, we have conscientious farm workers who live in other countries, some of whom have worked here before. We have Nigerian doctors. We have German engineers who are waiting years, patiently in line, trying to follow the rules of legal immigration to come into our country. But yet, the Biden administration will welcome anybody who can either secretly or less than secretly come into the United States from the southern border. Is that not correct?
I don't believe so. I believe that the people showing up at the border are mostly seeking humanitarian protections because there's a dire need in this hemisphere.
How about you, Mr. Secure? Do you think that my description is correct?
I do, Senator, and that seems to be obvious from watching the evening news.
Well, the agencies responsible for the legal immigration system, Mr. Costa, are failing to process applications promptly, aren't they?
I would say it depends. For low-wage work visas, they are mostly processing them quite quickly.
Well, we've got a backlog of 24 million applications. What do you mean it depends?
It depends on which visa you're talking about. I would say for H-2B, for instance, the USCIS prides themselves on how quickly they process those visas. When it comes to other things like work permits, they've been slow, and I think the problem is that Congress has not appropriated funds for them. They have this fee-based structure.
It's always money. We now have a larger federal budget adjusted for inflation than we've ever had in the history of the United States of America.
But with all due respect,
always the money. Mr. Secure, what kind of job do you think that the Biden administration has done with legal immigration with the 24 million person backlog?
I think any fair estimation is that it's poor.
Well, can we agree that legal immigration is good and illegal immigration is bad?
I would think so. The country is founded on immigration, people coming here from other countries. Legal immigration is good, yes.
Does anybody disagree with that statement? Does anybody want to defend the Biden administration's 24 million people backlog in legal immigration? but yet millions have come illegally across the border? Does anybody want to defend that? Anybody? Thank you for being here.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank you and Ranking Member Graham for convening this hearing. There's limited.
Kennedy is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks.
Senator Kane.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses here today. Professor Painter, on May 5th of this year, you put out a tweet. You said, I'm going to quote, "There are some things money can't buy. For everything else, there's the Supreme Court." Would you tell me which members of the Supreme Court you believe are bought?
I was particularly concerned at that point when I posted that tweet.
I understand, but if you could, I've got really limited time, and I apologize for interrupting. Just tell me which members of the court you are bought.
I did not think that Justice Clarence Thomas should be failing to disclose his trips on a billionaire's
Do you think
yacht
he's
and
bought?
airplane.
Do you think he's
I
bought?
believe that there is grave risk.
Do you think
that
he's bought?
I said there is grave risk.
Do you think he's bought?
To the confidence of the American people in our Supreme Court.
Well, if you don't think he's bought, why did you say it?
I said
Yes,
that
you said members of the Supreme Court are bought. You're here testifying as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you're saying the members of the Supreme Court are bought?
I said when the American people feel that way, when we have Supreme Court justices
feel that way?
on yachts and in planes of billionaires and not being disclosed.
Anybody besides Justice Thomas you think is bought on the Supreme Court?
I believe that the court needs to clean
Anybody
up
besides
its act.
Justice Thomas?
I'm not going to go through each
I mean,
justice.
you tweeted it.
I tweeted the way the American people feel.
Did you mean it when you tweeted it?
And I stand by that tweet. This Supreme Court of the United States needs to clean up its
Let me ask you a couple others here, because you've on September 17, 2020, you tweeted, "It looks like Putin's favorite senator could lose," referring to Senator Lindsey Graham. Could you tell me your evidence for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's favorite senator?
I don't recall that tweet and the story.
Well, I've got it. It's
tweeted
right
out.
here. It's right here.
I'm happy to look at the tweet, and I'm happy to write you, explain that. I don't know what that has to do with climate change.
Well,
Subject of
it
this
has
hearing.
to do with your credibility. Did you say, what is your basis for saying that Senator Graham is President Putin's? I mean, have you ever talked to President Putin?
I have not talked to President Putin, and I would be happy to go look at the tweet and look at the story that I tweeted out and what Senator Graham had said in that context. You know, this is something
you say all this stuff. For example, you're here as an expert for my Democratic friends, and you say all this stuff. You called on September 16, 2023, a professor at the University of Chicago, very distinguished professor, Brian Leiter. You called him a racist. Can you explain to me why you think he's a racist?
I remember a series of tweets with him. He's a Marxist who put out a number of statements attacking African Americans and women. And he also was raising money for someone who had called the police on a black student for sleeping in the common room, and now has a wokekkk.com website attacking
That's
me.
fair enough.
So
Fair enough.
I will just say one thing that I learned in high school debate, that when you have no argument, you simply change the subject.
All right. On October 15th of 2020, you said Lindsey Graham is soliciting cash payments in return for voting on a Supreme Court nomination. What evidence, that's a pretty bold statement, Professor. What evidence do you have for alleging that Senator Graham was taking cash in return for one of his votes.
I don't recall that specific tweet,
Here it
but
is,
I
right here.
do.
Here it
I
is.
do recall, and I
Do you think he
received-
was taking cash for one of his votes?
I have received campaign.
Do you think he was taking cash for one of his votes?
I'm answering your question, Senator. I have received solicitations from both political parties.
Do you think Lindsey Graham was
confirmation
taking
hearings
cash
for
for one of his votes? It's a simple question,
I have
Professor.
received cash solicitations for cash on my email. And yes, from both political parties in connection with Supreme Court confirmation votes.
Well, I'm out of
It's
time,
wrong.
but let me just say for the record.
It's wrong.
My aunt's Facebook page has more credibility than you do. I could spend the rest of the day reading your quotes where you make allegations against people and you can't defend them.
You've said nothing about climate change. You quoted everybody from a Marxist
Senator
to
Kaine.
all sorts of other people. This has absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the hearing, Senator.
Senator Kaine.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all of our witnesses here today. Ms. Robinson, I want to follow up by trying to understand your answer to one of Senator Cruz's questions. And this is really a question, not a suggestion. Do I understand your position to be that there are two sexes, but there can be more than two genders?
I wouldn't even say two, and we've got Dr. Lopez here as well, but there's also the definition of intersex. I think that often in these conversations we're conflating sex and gender, and I do want to affirm here that trans women are women. That is their gender.
Okay, but I'm trying to understand. Do you make a distinction between sex and gender?
Yes, sir.
Okay, explain that. Do you think there are more than two sexes?
I believe that there's a definition for intersex as well that I want to acknowledge. But sex is assigned at birth.
I'm just trying to understand. I'm thoroughly confused. So you're born, I'm talking about biology, male, female, and what else?
I believe that intersex is also acknowledged, but again, I'm not a doctor here. What I can
And
say
what does intersex mean?
is that there's a difference between sex and gender, and I think in these conversations we're conflating the two.
Well, but I want to start with sex. Okay, there's male, there's female. When a baby's born, before the baby has had time to even have a sense of self, there's male, female, and intersex. There's a third.
I believe that is true, but I would defer to Dr. Lopez as I'm not a physician.
Okay. And how many genders are there?
I think the gender is expansive, and the definitions are always growing. Today I can tell you, I talk to young people that talk about non-binary as
more than 5.
I think the gender is not a binary, is what I'm trying to say.
Are there more than 5 genders? I'm just trying to understand. Are there more than 5 genders?
Well, I think that there was a time where women wearing pants didn't feel like it was appropriate for their gender, and yet I'm wearing pants today. I think that there are ways that we express our gender that are expansive.
Are there more than 5?
I wouldn't subject myself to naming how many genders there are, but what I can say is that gender is a reflection.
Number?
Excuse me?
There's an infinite number of genders?
I think depending on your culture, there are a lot of different genders that exist. And I can also say that it's a term that's evolving. If you look at young people today, they really don't lean into the binary of only woman and man. So I think that it's incumbent upon us not to legislate on this, but create space for them to explore what their identities are, what their gender identities are.
Let's get back to athletics. I think I understand what you're saying. There are 3 sexes. Male, female, and intersex.
I believe that to be true, but again, I'm not a physician.
And there are an infinite number of genders because gender is a mental state.
Gender is about expression, and I think that there are a variety of ways that you can express your gender.
Okay, so there's infinite number. All right, let's go back to the biology. Male, female, boy, girl. Okay, biologically, do males have an advantage over females biologically in sports?
Again, I'm not a physician and I can't speak to that.
What's your real world experience?
It depends. I mean, there are some people who are born male that I'm faster than if I were to sprint against them, and some that I'm not. Some males that are taller than some women, and some that are
You don't
shorter.
believe that a biological male has a physical advantage in sports over a biological female?
Not as a definitive statement.
Give me an example. Well, no, I don't think. How many female members of the NBA do you see?
Well, I can say that, there's been this news article about men that think that they could beat Serena Williams in tennis, right? That they think that they could actually score a point on her. And it's just not the case. She is stronger than that.
What's your experience, Ben? Male, female?
Both Serena and Venus lost to the 203rd ranked male tennis player, which they're phenoms for women. My experience, my husband, he swam at University of Kentucky as well. In terms of accolades and in terms of national ranking, I was a much better swimmer than him. He could kick my butt any day of the week without trying.
Okay. I just think, Ms. Robinson, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from. I think you lose a lot of credibility when you don't concede that a biological male has physical advantages over a biological female. I mean, I just think that's a proven fact, and you really hurt your credibility. I understand you want the world to be a better place. I do too, and I don't think people ought to be discriminated against because of an immutable characteristic. I don't. And I think that I think everybody ought to be free to be themselves. And what you do in your bedroom or what I do in my bedroom with a consenting adult is nobody's business. But if what I do in my bedroom with a consenting adult, if I decide I want to tell somebody's child about it, then other people have rights too. And I think parents have rights. And I think biological females have rights to be able to compete fairly in sport, in sports. So I really think you hurt your credibility when you refuse to acknowledge that biological males have an advantage over biological females. It kind of makes me wonder about all your testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Kennedy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What I'm trying to say is that there is not a definitive advantage in all cases. Sir, I don't know if you believe that you could beat Serena Williams in tennis, but I probably think that that's not the case. There are not all cases where all men are physically superior to all women. And at the end of the day, in this conversation, we're not talking about that. We're talking about trans women who are, in fact, women, who deserve to play in a gender that matches their sports, who deserve all the benefits that Ms. Gaines is talking about. And as a cisgender black woman, I can say definitively that my womanhood is not threatened by a transgender person asserting hers as well.
Senator Hirono.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank all of the persons who are testifying today. For Ms. Robinson, do you know what...
Kennedy of Louisiana is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here, Mr. Chairman, and to your colleagues. Thanks to all of you for giving so much to our country. As you know, our fiscal year, meaning the federal government's fiscal year, begins October 1. We're in the process of putting together a budget. If we pass a budget, we meaning Congress passes a budget that increases spending by, let's say, 10%, roughly $650 billion, what will be the impact on inflation?
So if it's, it depends on, of course, if it were funded by tax increases or other spending cuts, I guess in your hypothetical, it's not. It's so I think deficit spending at the margin stimulates the economy at the margin. It's a big economy, though.
And what will be the impact on inflation?
It would probably be a small effect on inflation ultimately, but there would be an effect through stimulation of the economy it would be more demand, which would, just in general, I'm not commenting on,
I know.
I'm sort of commenting on fiscal policy here, but nonetheless, there would be an effect on inflation.
I'm just asking you about basic economics. I just read a piece by one of your economists from the San Francisco Fed, Mr. Shapiro, who's arguing that labor costs had virtually nothing to do with service inflation and a negligible is a negligible factor in broader inflation. And I read this stuff from some of your people, and I just wonder what planet they parachuted in from. If Congress passes a budget, in my prior example, that reduces spending by 10%, roughly $650 billion, what impact will that have on inflation?
So that would, you'd have less stimulus for demand, and you'd be cutting programs if you did that, and therefore you'd be slowing the economy down, and the impact would be less demand. Neither of these ideas affects the supply side at all. So less demand would mean less economic activity, less spending, and that would have a negative effect on inflation.
Well, more stimulus by federal spending is inflationary. Is that right?
It has so we've been in this situation where inflation was so stable for 25 years, you remember, and almost nothing that we did mattered for inflation. And it's called the so-called flat Phillips curve, where there just wasn't a connection between how tight the economy is and inflation. That does not appear to be the case right now. I think many people would say that the Phillips curve is now not so flat, and that there is an interaction between.
So that's a yes.
I think that's a yes. Yeah, it's
Okay.
this is economics,
And less spending by government it means less stimulus, which tends to be disinflationary. Is that fair?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Let me ask you about the Basel III end game. You know what I'm talking about?
I do.
There's been some reporting, and of course, not every country has to follow the Basel recommendations. The European Union is not following. They're going their own way, and we're kind of going our own way in America, using the Basel directives as a guidepost. But it's been reported that the Fed's going to raise capital requirements by as much as 20%. Or, excuse me, it's going to raise capital requirements to 20%. Is that right?
No, the idea would be to raise them by 20%. In other words, if 20% of whatever current capital requirements are, you would raise it by 20% of the total existing amount.
Okay.
So
if J.P. Morgan's capital requirement right now is, let's say 13%, it would go to 15%?
Right, something like that. If that were to be what happens.
And this will be for banks $100 billion or more?
No. There isn't a final proposal. So, and I know it's still in motion. I know things are still changing.
Yeah,
so.
but you folks are talking
I've been
about
briefed
it,
on
and
it.
you're going to have a lot of input.
No, that's right. So, but I will say, sorry, what was it? Your question was?
Are you going to raise capital requirements for 20% to banks $100 billion or more? Or are you going to affect community banks as well, smaller?
No,
banks?
the capital requirements will be very, very skewed to the 8 largest banks, the G-SIBs. There may be some capital increases for the other banks, and there won't. I think none of this should affect banks under $100 billion.
The really big banks you're talking about?
Yes.
Are they the ones that are at risk right now?
They weren't. They were a source of strength in a place of strength.
They're doing
during the
pretty
recent
well.
Turmoil. Yeah.
We've gone from too big to fail to we're damn happy they're big. I mean, haven't we?
Well, I would say that, as I mentioned, we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort raising the capital standards 10 years ago and more recently, and I supported all of that and was happy to do so. And I think
Senator Kennedy's time's expired. Senator Smith of Minnesota.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy, as you always do. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Governor. Professor Keenan, you teach at Tulane?
Yes, sir, I do. I have that privilege.
And you have your own website, KeenanClimate.com, is that right?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. And you describe yourself on your website as a globally recognized thought leader. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you give paid speeches, do you?
On occasion, I do.
You have your own agent, I believe, according to your website, Lee Bureau.
This is correct.
And how much do you charge per speech?
It varies depending on the audience, the amount of preparation work that goes, and the amount of follow-through. Usually,
The last paid speech you gave, how much did you receive?
I'm happy to follow up on.
You don't remember?
I do not.
Do you give that money to Tulane?
I do not.
You keep it?
Yes, this is outside of my capacity as a professor.
Right.
As is
Now,
standard course.
you recently sent a letter you recently joined a lot of other academics. You signed a letter demanding that elite institutions and universities stop accepting money from fossil fuel companies. Is that correct?
This is correct.
You consider Tulane an elite university?
I would like to think that we have a high standard of excellence in our education and our research.
Okay. Well, the Murphy family of Murphy Oil and the Deming family of Murphy Oil have recently given Tulane $25 million. Have you called on Tulane to give that money back?
Well, it's not, they didn't give that money to my unit or the department or school that I work
Have you
in.
called on Tulane to give that money back, or you think that's okay for them to keep it?
It's their prerogative, not mine.
Okay. Yet you just signed a letter saying that all elite universities should refuse fossil fuel money. Did you put a footnote in there and say, except my own?
Well, what I'd like to say, Senator, is that I believe it raises a conflict of interest for those that research climate change that are supported by the fossil fuel
Yeah,
industry.
but then why don't you ask Tulane to give the $25 million back?
Well, I think in the context, if that money were to be used to support climate research, information, disinformation, or whatever it may be, then that may be an appropriate conflict of interest. But I think in the context of which
You don't see the hypocrisy here?
it is a hypocrisy in those that may read and interpret it as such.
Maybe it's like Washington. If there weren't double standards, there wouldn't be standards at all. Let me ask you this. You also participated in another article here criticizing Houston for building new buildings and McMansions. And you said, I'm going to read your quote. I don't want to misquote you, Professor. That means we have to change our consumer preferences. You could have a super efficient, energy efficient mega mansion in Houston or the suburbs, but it's still a mansion. You're still over consuming space. Did you say that?
Yes, sir. That's based on work as a member of the IPCC. Our research suggested that reducing our footprint in terms of total spatial footprint would have significant impacts on the decarbonization of the built environment.
And so you're saying that people should live in smaller houses because larger houses contribute to CO2 emissions?
100%, Senator.
Okay. Well, recently, Tulane finished the Commons. It was 77,000 square feet, $55 million. Recently, Tulane finished the Gold Ring Woldenberg Business Complex, $35 million to complete, 92,000 square feet. Boy, that's a McMansion. Mustapher Hall, 23,000 square feet. Paul Hall, 36,000 square feet. Richardson Hall, 50,000 square feet. Housing redevelopment phase 1, 230,000 square feet. at Tulane. Have you called upon Tulane to stop these buildings?
Sir, the habitable space within those units are roughly the size of the conference room back there and are indeed quite small.
But they contribute to, does...
Everything that we do,
does
sir,
the
contributes.
Commons contribute more to climate change than a McMansion in Houston? You were pretty quick to criticize the people of Houston for wanting to build, you thought, McMansions, but you don't criticize your own university?
I don't find that to be equivocal comparison between space meant for students who must reside at a university.
You don't see
and
the
those that-
hypocrisy in that?
It is your finding and interpretation, sir.
But you don't see the irony of the hypocrisy?
I'm going to go ahead and say no.
Okay. I kind of gathered that would be your answer. Governor, good to see you. You live in a big house, don't you?
Currently, I do, yes.
How big is the governor's mansion?
I don't know the square footage, but it's large, and it's 60 years old this year. You ought to come by and
I
see-
need to
see
get
the
by.
work.
Well, the professor from Tulane doesn't like that. Let me ask you, do you think it's fair? Look, John Bell, we get 37.5% of offshore oil royalties under Go Mesa. New Mexico gets 50% share from the federal government, for God's sakes. Wyoming gets 50%. North Dakota gets 50%. We get 37.5%, and we got to share it with 4 other states.
And it's capped at $375 million that we get to share no matter.
Yeah.
Yes. So
Now, that just sucks.
I don't think it's fair, and 90% of all Gulf oil and gas exploration production activities are served out of Port Fourchon. So we bear the brunt of the infrastructure necessary to make all of that happen, but we're not sharing the way other states share, and it's one of the reasons I thank the members of this committee while you were out for the ones who co-sponsored the RISE Act, because it is incredibly important for a state like Louisiana, and we constitutionally dedicate every dollar we get, as you know, to the coast.
All we're asking is to be treated like everybody else, aren't we?
Yes, sir.
And we have a solution, don't we?
We do.
And it's called the RISE Act. Tell us about the RISE Act.
Well, it's a wonderful piece of legislation that we are obviously hoping that you pass, not only for the benefits that you just mentioned, but currently there's no revenue sharing mechanism in place in federal law with respect to wind. We'll have the first offshore wind lease sale next month. And so this is a very real thing for us, especially as we look at the loss of the BP Horizon fines that have been paying. In fact, the Mid-Barataria, $2.9 billion paid for with BP dollars. But those go away in 2031. We really need to replace that revenue, and wind energy gives us an opportunity, but we need that structure in place, and I appreciate your work on that.
Well, to be blunt, we've proven we can use the money well, and we've put our own money up, and it is patently unfair that other states get a larger share, much larger share than Louisiana. And I think the RISE Act, which will also help our wind industry, as Senator Whitehouse knows, we're working together on, is long overdue. And I appreciate you coming up here to talk about that bill. I was in Judiciary, that's why I was late. And the chairman's been very generous with allowing me to go over. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Not a problem, Senator Kennedy. Glad to have you here with your governor present. And I would note that your colleague, Senator Cassidy, is also an extremely energetic and lively proponent of the RISE bill, and we continue to work together, Governor, with your delegation to try to make sure that we can get this bill passed through ENR with the support of your former gubernatorial colleague, now Senator Manchin, and we're continuing to make progress. With that, let me say that the questions for the record that need to be filed must be in by noon tomorrow. And if the witnesses would be kind enough to respond to any questions for the record you may receive within.
Can we agree that the FEMA administered National Flood Insurance Program risk rating 2.0 is woefully inadequate? Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Morris? Ma'am?
Yes.
Jerry, since I can't say your last name.
I would not say that it's woefully inadequate.
Okay. Imperfect as it is, does it make sense to you, Mr. Heller, to allow the National Flood Insurance Program to expire?
No, it doesn't. Short of getting a better solution in there, we need to have that backstop, and we absolutely should keep that around until we can.
We're not likely to get that better solution in a few weeks, are we?
No, we're not, but I'm glad that.
Do you think it makes sense, Ms. Norris, to allow it to expire?
I do not think it makes sense for it to expire. It needs to continue to be funded and reformed as needed.
All right. Mr. Jerry?
Thank you for the question. I think it should be allowed to continue, and not with a short-term 1-2 month kicking the can down the road.
Right.
I think there needs to be some more certainty about the availability of insurance. So I think a long-term reauthorization, 5 years, maybe 10 years, is more in order.
Right. Ms. Norris, if the world became carbon neutral by 2050, do you believe that would solve a lot of the problems of the costs of flood insurance and property casualty insurance?
Well, Senator, that's a pretty loaded question, and I'm not a scientist, but I do think, number one, that that's a wonderful thing to think about. I would love to know that we could get there.
Well, I've thought about it, and I'm hopefully you have too. But
I have
can tell
thought
you
about
don't
it.
want to answer my question, Mr. Heller. What do you think?
It's not going to solve the property insurance crisis that we have now. It is part of the risk projection, as was discussed earlier. We're trying to make risk plans for years going into the future. So we have to begin to solve that problem.
All right.
In the meantime, but
You don't think it will solve the problem?
It's not going to solve today's problem. No, we need to take more.
All right. How about you, Mr. Jerry?
I think it's a solution to a different issue, to one of pollution and to emissions, and what are we going to do during the transition going from fossil fuels to renewables?
Okay. If you were king for a day, Mr. Jerry, tell me what you would do to fix the problem of the cost of property and casualty insurance today.
I would shine a spotlight on the areas where there's disruption and dislocation and
What does that
equilibrium.
mean?
It means to
Give me 3 specific things you would do, just top line, to fix the cost problem today, in English.
have the California legislature to repeal Proposition 103, to have Florida continue its tort reforms where it has eliminated the abuses from.
All right, that's 2.
2. And the third one is to educate the public about how insurance works. I think that.
Yeah, they know how it works. It's called write a check. And then you have to sell blood plasma to go to the grocery store, which you probably have to do anyway because of President Biden's inflation. Give me 3 things you would do, Mr. Heller.
Thank you. No shiny objects, as Mr. Jerry was talking about, Mr. Thurda. We need to be putting money into protecting homes, making sure the levees are strong, making sure the communities
Okay,
invest in
government
infrastructure.
subsidies, that's number 1.
I would call it government alternative
Call it
spending.
anything you want. It's
Alternative
taxpayer
to
money.
spending
What's number
emergency
2?
disasters. Number 2 is build a federal reinsurance program like TRIA. When businesses in America, when commercial sector was afraid they weren't going to be able to get terrorism insurance anymore because of 9/11, we came in and we've created a solution.
So the government gets into the reinsurance business. What's number 3?
Let's get all of the regulators on the ball in the states. Move it down to the states. Get them on the ball to actually go through some of the data, because when we look at the data coming in from these insurance
Okay, that's
companies,
number 3. Get the regulators on the ball. What's number 4?
Oh wow, I get 4. Thank you, Senator. Well, I think number 4 is to address for the needs of lower and moderate income people by making sure that we are not creating an insurance market that slices and dices and prices people based on their socioeconomic status with things like these penalizing good, safe homeowners
Let me give
with
Ms.
credit
Can I
penalties.
give Ms. Norris a chance, Mr. Chairman?
Then your time
Thank you.
expires when
Right.
she answers.
I'm sorry, Mr. Sherrod.
Without comments.
Mr. Sherrod, can I give, Mr. Sherrod said I can give you a chance to answer, Ms.
If I
Norris.
give you just two, first of all, I'm going to affirm everything that was just mentioned. Number one is we need to invest in ways of being able to get our communities and our buildings resilient.
Okay, government subsidies, that's number one.
And number two is to create this reinsurance program. We've got to stabilize the markets.
Get the government in the reinsurance
Yes.
business.
Yes, and then I
Okay,
would say.
thank you.
yes.
Thank you, Senator John. Your time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for calling this hearing. Mr. Daly, am I saying your name correctly, sir?
That's correct.
Yes. Mr. Daly, if I am a recipient of content created by generative AI, do you think I should have a right to know that that content was generated by a robot?
Yes, I think you do. I think the details would depend on the context, but in most cases, I think,
Okay.
I or anybody else, if I receive something, I'd like to know, is this real or was this generated?
Mr. Smith?
Generally, yes. What I would say is if you're listening to an audio, if you're watching a video, if you're seeing an image and it was generated by AI, I think people have a right to know. The one area where I think there's a nuance is if you're using AI to say, help you write something. Maybe it's helping you write the first draft. Just as I don't think any of us would say that when our staff helps us write something, we're obliged to give the speech and say, now I'm going to read the paragraph that my staff wrote. You make it your own. And I think the written word is a little more complex, so we need to think that through. But as a broad principle, I agree with that principle.
Professor?
There are situations where you probably wouldn't expect to be dealing with the product of generative AI, and in those instances...
Well, that's the problem.
Right. But as times change, it's possible that our expectations change, and so...
But as a principle, do you think that people should have a right to know when they're being fed content from generative AI?
I tell my students, it depends on the context. Generally speaking, if you're vulnerable to generative AI, then the answer is absolutely yes.
What do you mean if you're vulnerable?
So there may be situations...
I'm just looking for...
Sure.
No disrespect.
No, not at all.
A straight answer.
Absolutely.
I kind of like... I like two things, breakfast food and straight answers.
I love them.
And
Well,
if a robot is feeding me information and I don't know it's a robot, am I entitled to know it's a robot as a consumer? Pretty straight up.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes.
All right.
In a lot of
Start back with Mr. Daly. Am I entitled to know who owns that robot and where that content came from? I know it came from a robot, but somebody had to goose the robot to make it give me that content. Am I entitled as a consumer to know who owns the robot?
I think that's a harder question that depends on the particular context. I think, if somebody is feeding me a video and it's been identified as being generated by AI, I now know that it's generated, it's not real. If it's being used, for example, in a political campaign, then I would want to know who
But let me stop you.
informed it.
Let's suppose I'm looking at a video and it was generated by a robot. Would it make any difference to you whether that robot was owned by, let's say, President Biden or President Trump? Don't you want to know in evaluating the content who owns the robot and who prompted it to give you this information?
I would probably want to know that. I don't know that I would feel it would be required for me to know that.
How about you, Mr. Smith?
I'm generally a believer in letting people know not only that it's generated by a computer, but who owns the program that's doing it. The only qualification I would offer, and it's something you all should think about and would know better than me, there are certain areas in political speech where one has to decide whether you want people to act with anonymity. The Federalist Papers were first published under a pseudonym. And I think in the world today, I'd rather have everybody know who's speaking. Okay, but you should think about it.
Professor?
I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you again, Senator, with a not straight answer, but I agree.
How do you feel about breakfast food?
Right. I am pro breakfast food.
Okay.
So we agree on that. I agree with Mr. Smith. I think that there are circumstances where you'd want to preserve anonymous speech, and there are some where you absolutely would want to know who.
Okay. Well, I'm not. I don't want to go too over. Obviously, this is an important subject, and the extent to which I think. Let me rephrase that. The extent of most senators' knowledge in terms of the nuances of AI. Their general impression is that AI has extraordinary potential to make our lives better if it doesn't make our lives worse first. And that's about the extent of it. In my judgment, we're not nearly ready to be able to craft a bill that looks like somebody designed it on purpose. I think we're more likely to take baby steps. And I ask you those questions predictably because Senator Schatz and I have a bill. It's very simple. It says if you own a robot that's going to spit out artificial content to consumers, consumers have the right to know that it was generated by a robot and who owns the robot. And I think that's a good place to start. But again, I want to thank my colleagues here, my chair and my ranking member. They know a lot about this subject, and I want to hear their questions too. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy. On behalf of the chairman, we're going to start a second round.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Haas, you're with Johnson & Johnson, is that right?
Yes, sir.
How is that stakeholder capitalism working out for you?
How is it working for Johnson & Johnson? It's one of the greatest honors of my life.
Okay. I see where you, Johnson & Johnson, has joined with a number of other good American companies, J.P. Morgan. He's not a company. Mr. Colin Kaepernick on his issue of police brutality. Procter & Gamble, Facebook, Apple, y'all pledged $50 billion to, quote, be a force for social change and fight injustice. $50 billion is a lot of money. How is that commitment consistent with what you're asking us to do here today?
Sir, I'm not aware of the particular commitment you're referencing, but I could
It's right
say
here on the
dispositively.
internet. It's got to be right.
I could say dispositively that the consistency is, in the end, to ensure that each and every act that the company takes is consistent with our credo. Okay. And our credo puts the public and our patients first.
Right. Let me ask the professor a few basic questions because I'm still learning about this issue. Johnson & Johnson took it, before I do, I forgot to ask you one question. How many talc cases have you tried to verdict?
There have been 42 cases that have gone to verdict. Of those, we have prevailed in 32.
Okay, so you lost 10.
Yes.
Okay, and what were the total damages in the 10 that you lost?
The damages ranged dramatically.
Just give me a total.
I don't know the total. I can give you a approximate. The highest one was in the billions.
Okay. All right, Professor. I don't want to just pick on Johnson & Johnson, but they're the one here. Let me pick on Georgia Pacific, okay? I don't want to pick on anybody. I'm learning on this issue, but let's call them Corporation A, gets sued with respect to mass torts. They spin off the liabilities to a shell corporation, and that shell corporation files Chapter 11 bankruptcy, right?
Sure.
Is that legal under the bankruptcy code?
Is that legal? The code does not restrict that necessarily. Courts have found that there are a variety of bases to reject that sort of action. So courts have been pretty active in this space. I should probably, Senator Whitehouse
what's
left,
the consensus? I mean, some bankruptcy judges say this is a legitimate use of the bankruptcy code, I presume. Other bankruptcy judges say, no, it's not, and it's dismissed. Is that a fair statement?
That is a fair statement. I think that there's a nuance here, if you don't mind, I can flesh it out a little bit.
What's the national consensus on this?
I think the national consensus is that this is a proper action under state law, but to the extent there is some sort of impropriety, bankruptcy court judges are very well positioned to police that, as we've seen in the LTL case. So it's not that Senator Whitehouse pointed out that I was supporting Texas two-step. I'm not supporting Texas two-step. I'm merely providing that
so
to the extent there is malfeasance,
the
it can be
authority
addressed.
to say this is an abuse of the code, right?
Exactly.
And
Courts can address
that. How many have done that?
Well, the most prominent one is LTL. So in the Third Circuit now, there's a very rigorous
test. Is there a
test.
split among the circuits?
There is. So the Fourth Circuit, and we were talking about forum shopping earlier, that would encourage forum shopping, absolutely.
Okay. Is there a case before the Supreme Court to resolve this?
No.
I bet there's one coming. I mean, and what are you asking us to do today? Let me start with Mr. Haas again. What are you asking us to do today?
The ask from our perspective to Congress would be to make uniform that very issue you just identified. What is the standard with respect to dismissing a case? Now, there's a distinction between the propriety of a Texas two-step, let's call that, it's a divisional merger statute, and the question of what is a standard that you apply when you dismiss a case. Our case was not dismissed because of anything to do with the Texas two-step. Nobody challenged the Texas two-step in our case. In fact,
Mr. Haas, you just had a golden opportunity to answer my question. Let me ask you, Mr. Parikh, and you didn't do it. Professor, tell me what you think we should do today. What you think Congress would do.
I think there are very large issues here. I think, as I mentioned before, 524G needs to be amended to capture all mass tort cases. Once that's done, you can have uniformity in process and procedure with all these cases. Some involve asbestos, some don't. The code can be revised to provide clarity on whether third-party releases can be part of a plan. I think that'd be very helpful. And then, of course, the future claimants representative. If that could be modified, have some more integrity in that selection process, those pieces together, I think, would really improve the process.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy asked a good question. We tried to follow through on it as to just what were the verdicts or the settlements in these cases. Some of it is hard to come by very quickly, but there was one case in Missouri that was $4.69 million for a group of 20 claimants, reduced on appeal to $2 billion, to give you a range here. But remember the offer from Johnson & Johnson through LTL was for $8.9 billion for 60,000 claimants. Put that in perspective. Next up, I believe, is Senator Hirono.
Professor, when a consumer interacts with AI-generated content, let's say as voiced by a robot, do you think the consumer has the right to know that it's talking, he or she is talking to a robot?
If that question is to me, yes, I do. And I think that is really a key area, these new kinds of necessary disclosures where we can try to reduce the incidence of this kind of fraud.
That's a yes. Does anybody disagree with the professor? You agree, both of you?
I generally agree. I would like to know personally.
Okay.
I do also generally agree with that. I do think it depends a little bit on your definition of AI and the particular function or use case we're discussing. But generally, when you're talking the financial services sector,
Professor, do
folks
you,
should know.
do you think the consumer should be able to know not only that the content is generated by AI, but do you think the consumer is entitled to know who owns the robot and therefore the generated content?
Yes, and I think that's part of a more general principle of knowing in any entity that you're interacting with what interest are they representing.
Okay. When a bank loans money, it has a profit motive, does it not?
Yes, sir.
It wants to be paid back. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And if the bank is not paid back enough times, the bank goes broke. Am I right?
That is correct.
Okay. Do you think it is possible to generate, through artificial intelligence, an underwriting system that precisely determines who is unlikely to pay back a loan?
I believe that that machine learning models with a lot of data and AI can significantly increase the accuracy by which such decisions could be made.
Can it do that right now?
Lending firms use models right now to predict the best they can, subject to the kinds of factors they're allowed to consider to determine whether a loan will be paid back.
But I'm going to use as the benchmark the current underwriting system, the different approaches that various financial institutions take. You think AI can improve on that in terms of determining precisely who's likely to pay the loan back and who isn't?
It can improve on that in part on the ways that it could potentially take into account much more information than is generally available to systems.
Okay, and let's
today.
suppose that system is developed, and all of you experts agree, yes, this system is more precise in determining who is likely to pay the money back as opposed to someone else. It's better than what we have now. By definition, it's going to have a disparate impact, is it not? I mean, some people are going to get a loan and some aren't, right?
That's right, but I think that we need to make a distinction between.
Okay, can I just finish this thought?
Certainly.
Because I only have a minute. If we all agree on that system, this is a really good system to predict who can pay the money back and who it can't. And we know by definition it's going to have a disparate impact. Some people are going to get a loan, some people are not going to get a loan. Do you think at that juncture government should step in or has the right to step in and say, no, we don't like the result?
Yes.
Because it didn't include enough people from this area or enough people of this educational level.
I think there are other interests besides accuracy that are legitimate to be considered in the public interest.
If you could answer my question, do you think government at that point should be able to step in and say, no, we do not like the results?
I think that in some circumstances, if the reason for that decision has systematic negative effects in our society, that would be a legitimate interest.
But we all agreed, didn't we, that this system was the best system available?
It was the most accurate, which I don't necessarily think is the same thing as being the best.
So you think, what other factors do you think should be considered other than whether someone's going to pay back the loan?
Notions of fairness in
So you think a loan should be made to someone who's less likely to pay back the loan as opposed to someone who's more likely to pay back the loan on the basis of fairness, and government ought to make that decision?
I think if the processes by which the decisions are made are not fair, those processes should not be allowed.
You want quotas, in other words, right?
No, that's not correct.
It sounds to me like correct? I don't know.
I
Mr.
would just-
Chairman,
I-
can I let this gentleman?
I would just add that under the law, a lender has to look for a less discriminatory alternative when they use a model. But I think the promise of AI here is that FICO and other kind of legacy scoring systems are known to like very heavily correlate with protected class characteristics. AI done
Yes,
right.
but this would improve on FICO, and if we
that's
all
right.
agree that it's an improvement on FICO and it still has a result that government doesn't like, should government have the right to step in and say, yeah, it's a better system, but we don't like the results?
No, I think if it's more fair and more accurate, that's an absolute win for society. And I think even under existing tests that we have in the law, AI can be a big improvement on the status quo.
Has expired. Ms. Coitia, I'd like to start with you. For some time, a number of us have raised concerns about how big corporations are using people's data.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's clear to me from listening today that we still have a lot of work left to do. I want to start with trying to look at this issue from 30,000 feet. For many years now, college athletics has generated enormous revenues. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. That's a good thing. The Supreme Court comes along in what, the Alston case, is that right? In 2021, and changes where that money's going. Before, that money was going to TV stations and universities and coaches and others, I guess, construction companies that were building the new stadiums. And then after the Supreme Court decides the Alston case in 2021, the kids start getting paid. And all hell breaks loose. I mean, is that what is going on here? The fact that the money is being redistributed, and that's going to cause the world to spin off its axis because the kids are getting a share of the dough? Governor?
What I would say, Senator, in response to the Alston decision is there is flexibility for schools that can afford to make Alston payments to do so, and they can make Alston payments in particular sports, as long as they manage to satisfy the Title IX requirements. And they can choose what level they want to support, and they can also choose to play or not.
But you're getting down into the weeds, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing. We're going to have to get in the weeds. But that's what before the Alston case, everything was just fine. And then the Alston case is handed down, and the kids start getting some of the money, not the adults. The adults have got a share. And all of a sudden, the world's on fire. What am I missing here?
For the record, I support the Alston stuff. I also support NIL. I just would like to see a little more transparency and support for information to make it easier for student athletes to succeed in this space.
Well, let me make this suggestion to you, and I want to hear from the rest of the panel. I would strongly encourage you and your colleagues to try to get together and come up with a new system for us to consider that looks like somebody designed it on purpose. You may regret asking Congress to intervene here. All of a sudden, you're going to be micromanaged. Now, I'm not saying we shouldn't, and my colleagues have raised excellent points, and it sounds to me like we do have a bit of a I don't know, wild, wild west, as Chairman Blumenthal described it. But I'd be real careful before you invite Congress in to start micromanaging your business. Let me go back to the original question. any of you. What am I missing about this? Isn't this fight over the fact that the kids are now getting some of the money that the adults were getting before? Yes, sir.
Absolutely, absolutely. The injustice that has been inflicted on college athletes seemed to be fine for the industry until we won some court rulings and state legislatures started passing laws. Essentially, the industry had a monopoly on college athletes' NIL value. They owned every penny. Nike wants to slap a logo on a kid, got to pay the school. Kid can't get a penny. That's what this is about. Many of the schools even said, hey, if that happens, we're going to lose money. Well, that means you've been stealing money from these kids. If it's against like the Supreme Court, if it violates antitrust law, that's the problem. You know, the opposition, even employment stats, all this is about, we don't want to pay them fairly. You know, NIL, just so you know, this is not equitable economic situation here. That's like saying, go get another job because we're not going to pay you for what you do here. You know, we're going to cap you. Have a national price fix for a scholarship, no matter, and a lot of these schools, I don't know if that's me or not.
That's the NFL, man.
Is it? So, and we can't treat every division as if it's the same. FBS schools masquerading as D3 schools, saying there are no employees here. You know, and Notre Dame, I know I would imagine they have students in the bookstore as employees. It doesn't seem to harm their educational opportunity. There's no congressional hearings about that. We're talking about equal rights. And this industry is operating in an illegal fashion. It's breaking antitrust law, breaking labor laws, and now it's coming home. And players are getting, you know, avenues and levers and pulling leverage, and here we are saying the sky's going to fall, but it's not the truth.
I agree with you. I don't mean to go over so much, Mr. Chairman. We are talking about rights here, but we're also talking about money. And it just seems to me that this controversy, in part, has been caused by a model of redistribution for that money. And I've got a lot of sympathy for the kids, I have to tell you. The adults seem to be able to take care of themselves, but it's the kids that make all this possible. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to all the members of our panel for being here today. Dr. Kelly, you are head of environmental analytics, is that right? What's the name of your company?
Resilience.
Resilience, okay. You're a PhD?
That's correct.
Where'd you do your work?
At the University of Cambridge.
Okay. If you were king for a day, Doctor, and you were not fettered or constrained by any political considerations, can you just list for me, I don't think we'll have time for you to explain each one at length, but list for me the 5 things you would do, king, to make America carbon neutral by 2050.
Thank you, Senator, for that question. The first and most important thing is to decarbonise the energy sector. So I'd remove fossil fuels from the economy as fast as possible and transition to renewable energy. I would then require businesses to disclose their financial risks so that the community can understand, investors and shareholders can understand what those risks are and make better investment decisions. I would then work with the international community to make sure that the grid around the world is decarbonised. I would also work on agriculture, move to agriculture and other sectors to make sure that we can...
Well, that's not very specific. Let me try it again. Give me the 5 things. You're king now, but for one day. 5 new rules in the United States of America, so we'll be carbon-free by 2050.
I would put in a rule to make sure...
You'd get rid of oil and gas. That's the first one. That was the most specific.
Require companies to disclose climate-related risks.
Okay, that's 2.
I would invest in new technologies to decarbonise industrial processes to reduce emissions.
Okay, and what's 4?
Work with international communities to...
Work with the community, okay. Is there another one?
And to work with political leaders across.
Work with political leaders, yeah. You sound like a consultant. All right, let's take get rid of oil and gas. And what would you replace it with?
Renewable energy.
What kinds?
Wind and solar are presently the most cost effective.
Nuclear?
I'm personally not in favor of nuclear.
You don't like nuclear. Okay. How much will it cost and over what period of time do we have to get rid of all oil and gas and go to wind and solar?
So the good thing about wind and solar is that it's now more cost effective than producing new.
Over what period of time would we have to make this transition?
Well, we need to do it before 2050 to get to the US.
If we do it to
zero
2050, I'm trying to understand should I give up? Dr. Rose, can you give me, if you were king for a day, the 3 things you would do?
We'll start on something that you might find more attractive. I'd invest.
I'm not interested in
right.
attractive,
No, I'd invest.
But I've been to so many of these hearings
Right.
where people come and talk about catastrophe, and you say, okay, what do we do about it? And you get nothing but nonsense.
Right.
So if you could give me, this is your chance, just 3 specific things, King, that you would do.
So I would invest in carbon capture and storage. I don't think we need to get rid of all fossil fuels immediately.
That's one. Number 2.
Number 2, I would pass a renewable portfolio standard for the U.S., which calls for a shift to renewables and electricity generation. So I recently completed a study where
don't have time.
All right.
What's number 3?
I would pass a cap and trade bill in the U.S. to find the least cost ways of dealing with climate change.
Tell me how that would work.
You essentially place a cap on emissions, you give permits or allowances to entities, and you allow them to trade. That trading shifts the cost burden to the lowest cost entities. We found that can save 70% of the potential costs of dealing with climate change as opposed to passing across the board.
You put a tax on carbon?
Well, it's different than a tax because you can freely grant these allowances and then it's trading. So it's not a tax. It's different than a tax.
All right. How much do you think all this will cost? Your best guess.
I don't have a dollar figure, but the figure is a lot lower than what I've heard on this side of the aisle today.
Well, you think we ought to just do it and then worry about the cost?
No, I think we should do studies.
What's your, I mean, you advise the UN and you're at USC, and that's a pretty good school.
Right.
What's your best guess about what it'll cost us to decarbonize by 2050?
Well, one thing I'd like to mention to the gentleman, Brown, that it's not the government paying this cost.
Yes, but could you give me a figure first?
I would say it might cost us 2% of GDP per year. So that's in terms of the U.S. to start, and that's a couple of $100 billion.
Couple of $100 billion
to start, and then it'll level off.
Is that every
and
year?
eventually, I think
I
we'll
don't know
save
why I
money.
can't get straight answers, okay?
right.
Y'all want to
All right.
talk about the problem, but you never want to answer the question.
No, I've been answering it.
Well, no, you haven't. I'm just asking for a figure.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have a figure that it would cost to decarbonize by 2050? That's all I'm asking. Does anybody have one?
So my answer is you start out with $200 billion and you get down to a cost savings by 2040.
What would be the total cost by 2050, you think?
At most, a couple of $100 billion by 2050 over 25 years.
So you think we can totally decarbonize America by a couple of $100 billion?
Well, I didn't say totally decarbonize because remember I said carbon capture
neutral.
and start.
You're right, carbon neutral.
Right.
Does anybody disagree with that?
I personally, that estimate is probably, is that a yearly figure, I'm assuming?
No, that's total.
Total
That's
200 billion.
200 billion for the whole
For
package.
total, with some,
What is your figure, Professor?
I'm not prepared to give a figure.
You don't know. You just want us to do it and pay for it later.
it's a
Do you have a figure, ma'am?
No, sir, this is really out of my area of expertise.
Can you, either you gentlemen?
Senator, I don't have a figure, and I wouldn't want to do the task you assigned me. But if you did, and I had to do that, I would take the Green New Deal and implement it. I would put the U.S. economy on a...
How much would it cost?
It'll cost our country, our liberties, our economy. We'll have to nationalize...
How much will it cost?
Our country.
Okay. Do you have an idea?
I have seen estimates that are a much higher percentage of GDP than Dr. Rose has indicated.
I mean, it's frustrating, folks. I don't mean to be rude, but I can't tell you how many hearings I've been through. And you say, well, the world is coming to an end. Okay? All right. How much will it cost? We don't know.
The point is, Senator, that the cost of doing
We're
nothing
not
is higher.
sure. We need to get back to you. No fair-minded policymaker is going to embark on something that might cost a minimum of $200 billion. Based on what I've read, that's low. I don't know why you won't just answer straight.
It's a difficult question to answer because...
Of course it's difficult. That's what you're here for.
Technology advances at different rates, and so if...
You want us to just go start and then worry about the cost later? Come on, Professor. This isn't Cambridge. These are taxpayers
We
paying
need
for
to
all
make
this.
hard decisions now to transition...
Well, then how
economy
much will they
completely.
cost?
We need to invest...
You don't even know.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy of Louisiana is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Levitt, Hamas runs Gaza, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And lots of people help Hamas, don't they?
There are people who help. There are lots of people in Gaza who oppose Hamas as well.
Well, Qatar sends Hamas $10 million a month to run the place, does it not?
It has.
The Palestinian Authority, which the people of Gaza rejected in favor of Hamas, pays Gaza's electricity bill. They keep the lights on for Hamas, don't they?
Well, to be clear, the people of Gaza didn't reject the Palestinian Authority. Hamas took over with force of arms.
I don't want to debate that.
Yeah. There's not much to debate.
Yes,
The
there-
Palestinian Authority does provide salaries to its people in Gaza.
Does the Palestinian Authority pay for the keeping the lights on in Gaza?
They pay for some of it, yes.
The UN sends Hamas money to educate the children, does it not?
UN pays for some education in Gaza. They do
Is
that
that a
through their
yes?
own agencies.
Is that a yes?
They provide the money into Gaza, yes.
I'll take that as a yes. The UN gives Hamas money to run hospitals, does it not?
The UN runs hospitals in Gaza too, yes.
And in fact, doesn't Hamas tax at the rate of 16.5% every bit of food and aid that comes in to Gaza?
They do tax everything. I don't know the exact
And
percent.
Hamas levies a tax on even fish caught, does it not?
They tax everything.
And Hamas also levels an income tax, does it not?
That too.
Okay. President Biden's administration has not enforced the sanctions on Iranian oil, on Iranian oil, has it?
No.
Okay. So you agree with Ms. I'm sorry, I can't see you. Pleska. So you agree?
I tend to make it a policy to try to agree with Ms. Pletko whenever possible.
Yeah. Well, you're smart. You told us you were smart. President Biden has not chosen to impose the snapback sanctions under the JPCOA, has he?
Correct.
Okay. Ms. Pletka, who has the $6 billion?
It's in a bank in Qatar.
Okay. So Qatar has control of it.
In essence, that is correct, although...
Well, let me put it this way. If the Qatar bank, there's a Qatar bank. If the Qatar tells them to do something and the United States tells them not to do something, who's the bank going to listen to?
Well, that is the question before us right now.
Who's the bank going to listen to?
Qatar,
Of
their
course.
government.
Okay. And isn't it a fact that back in 2021, Treasurer Yellen, through special drawing rights at the International Monetary Fund, gave Iran $4.5 billion?
That's what I understand, yes.
And she'd like to give them more.
That's what I understand, yes.
That's like cash money. It's really a dividend. You can cash in for U.S. dollars. Is that right?
That's what I understand.
Wow. It seems to me that we could cut off Hamas, or at least to go a long way toward doing that by actually just enforcing the things that we already say we're enforcing.
Every authority that is necessary to cut off Iran, Hamas, and every other terrorist group is already in the president's hands. The question is never whether the president can, it's whether the president will.
Well, why has the Biden administration been so soft on Iran? If we know Iran is funding Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, their surrogates in Syria, their surrogates in Iraq, why has President Biden's administration been so soft on them?
Well,
do they just think love is the answer, and that this isn't a bar fight, and that, I mean, it just looks to me like this administration is quoting Socrates in the middle of a prison riot.
That's a very apt picture. I'm not a spokesman for the Biden administration, so I can only give you my estimation. There has always been a problem in our compartmentalization in dealing with Iran. We have prioritized their nuclear program, their nuclear weapons program, understandably, but we have not ignored, but diminished the importance of their support for terrorism, their regional disruptions, and their human rights record. Those things need to change. We need to tighten the screws on Iran in every single aspect.
Peace through weakness never works, does it?
No.
Thank you, Senator Kennedy.
Dr. Rose, can you give me, if you were king for a day, the three things you would do?
We'll start on something that you might find more attractive. I'd invest.
I'm not interested in
right. No, I'd invest.
But I've been to so many of these hearings
right.
where people come and talk about catastrophe, and you say, okay, what do we do about it? And you get nothing but nonsense.
Right.
So if you could give me, this is your chance, just three specific things, King, that you would do.
So I would invest in carbon capture and storage. I don't think we need to get rid of all fossil fuels immediately.
That's one. Number two.
Number two, I would pass a renewable portfolio standard for the U.S., which calls for a shift to renewables and electricity generation. So I recently completed a study where the...
Don't have time.
All right.
What's number three?
I would pass a cap and trade bill in the U.S. to find the least cost ways of dealing with climate change.
Tell me how that would work.
You essentially place a cap on emissions, you give permits or allowances to entities, and you allow them to trade. That trading shifts the cost burden to the lowest cost entities. We found that can save 70% of the potential costs of dealing with climate change as opposed to passing across the board.
You put a tax on carbon?
Well, it's different than a tax because you can freely grant these allowances and then it's trading. So it's not a tax. It's different than a tax.
All right. How much do you think all this will cost? Your best guess.
I don't have a dollar figure, but the figure is a lot lower than what I've heard on this side of the aisle today.
Well, you think we ought to just do it and then worry about the cost?
No, I think we should do studies.
I mean, you advise the UN, and you're at
Right.
USC, and that's a pretty good school.
Right.
What's your best guess about what it'll cost us to decarbonize by 2050?
Well, one thing I'd like to mention to the gentleman, Brown, that it's not the government paying this cost.
Yes,
He
but could you
made
give me
a
a figure
suggestion.
first?
I would say it might cost us 2% of GDP
Tell me
per year.
quantify.
So that's in terms of the U.S. to start, and that's a couple of $100 billion.
Couple of $100 billion.
To start, and then it'll level off.
Is that every
and
year?
eventually,
Wait,
I think
I don't know
we'll
why I
save money.
can't get straight answers, okay?
right.
Y'all want
All
to
right.
talk about the problem, but you never want to answer the question.
No, I've been answering it.
Well, no, you haven't. I'm just asking for a figure.
Mm-hmm.
Does anybody have a figure that it would cost to decarbonize by 2050? That's all I'm asking. Does anybody have one?
So my answer is you start out with 200 billion and you get
Okay.
down to a cost savings by 2040.
What would be the total cost by 2050, you think?
At most, a couple of $100 billion by 2050 over 25 years.
So you think we can totally decarbonize America by a couple of $100 billion?
Well, I didn't say totally decarbonize because remember I said carbon
Carbon
capture and
neutral,
start.
you're right, carbon neutral.
Right.
Does anybody?
Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Bejar, social media can make people less lonely, can it not?
It can do that.
Social media can deliver insight, can it not?
It can.
Social media, when used properly, can give voice to the timid, can it not?
It can.
Social media can also spread hate, can it?
It can.
And isn't it a fact that much of social media, not all, but much of social media has become a cesspool of snark?
What I can speak to, Senator, is it happens all so often, and it doesn't need to be that way.
Yeah. But is it that way for much of, not all, but much of social media?
One of the numbers that I talk about is this 20% of kids who witnessed bullying in the last 7 days. And this is content that does not get taken down. If people comment on it, it gets promoted.
Yeah. Well, let me put it another way. I'm trying to sum this up for us. Isn't it a fact that social media has lowered the cost of being an a-hole?
Yes.
And isn't it true that social media removes any geographical border to the harassment of others?
Yes.
And isn't it true that some forms of social media optimize for engagement?
Yes, I think using your term, they reward being an a-hole.
Yeah. And isn't it true that some forms of social media use surveillance to identify our and our kids' hot buttons?
I cannot speak to that.
Isn't it true that some forms of social media use algorithms to show us and our kids stuff that pushes those hot buttons?
I will say this. Recently, my daughter had somebody go into one of her posts about cars and said, you know, you like to drive and you like cars because you saw a man doing it. And she said, I'm studying automotive restoration. I've been doing this for years. I know a lot about cars. I am more than qualified. And the person shot back, no, women just belong in the passenger seat. And to every point that you just made, I will say that when I asked her about that post, if she would delete it because she knows reporting would do nothing, she said, I will not delete it because I'm worried that that will mean that less people will see my posts.
All right. I'm not going to ask you this question. I'm going to make the statement because you're probably not familiar with Louisiana, but in my state, social media has impacted the news media, particularly print media. Thank God for our TV news and our radio news, but when it comes to our print media, we in Louisiana, and that's print media and paper and print media, which is on the internet. When it comes to print media, we in Louisiana are a news desert. We've only got about 2 real non-news print media journalists left who are fair and aren't opinion journalists. Most of our print media members are now sports journalists, which is fine. I love sports, but there's a lot else going on in the world. Let me wrap up this way. What you do is what you believe, isn't it?
It is.
And everything else is just cottage cheese, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. I look forward to the day when members of the United States Senate will come together and establish a new rule. Not used every day or every week or every month or even every year. But that rule would say, when there is a consensus, and when you as a senator can demonstrate that you have 60 votes to pass a bill, that you have the right to bring that bill to the floor of the United States Senate, no matter who doesn't want it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Kennedy.
Welcome back to American Hearings. This compilation covers more ground than most senators cover in a full session, and Kennedy's through line across all of it is the same. If you can't give me a number, a name, or a direct answer, your expertise is doing a lot less work than you think it is. The Taylor Swift ticket hearing is where the approach is most visible. Kennedy doesn't debate the legal theory of whether the situation constitutes an antitrust violation. He identifies the consumer's actual concern, price, and builds toward a practical solution: non-transferable tickets, or transferable only at face value. When the industry witnesses line up to support it, he calls out that this largely solves the problem. When they don't, he notes what that signals about their priorities. The AI hearing with Sam Altman produces one of the more memorable exchanges in the compilation. Kennedy presents 3 hypotheses: Congress doesn't understand AI, that ignorance may not stop Congress from regulating it badly, and that a rogue wing of the AI community could use it to harm everyone. He then asks what rules they'd implement as king for a day. The specificity of the answers varies sharply, and that variation is itself revealing. The climate cost exchange is the most pointed. Multiple witnesses advocate for major policy shifts but cannot or will not name a total cost figure. Kennedy's frustration is real and earned. You're asking for action, but you won't name the price tag. A fair-minded policymaker can't work from that. The SVB section holds the Federal Reserve accountable for stress testing 34 banks in 2022 for the wrong risks. Rising interest rates weren't the scenario being modeled. The bank failed precisely because of rising interest rates. Kennedy names it with characteristic economy. It's like going in for a COVID test and getting a cholera test. The chair doesn't disagree. The PBM drug pricing exchange ends with Kennedy's favorite sign-off in high-stakes policy hearings. Why don't we skip the foreplay and go right to the solution? Subscribe to American Hearings.